You are warmly welcome to attend this 20-second session on the essence of the practice of Tibetan Buddhism and also the 7th session of the series on mind training. Today's topic is the essence of Heart Sutra and the corresponding relationship between fusion into one and mind training, and the nature of emptiness after one's death. Before we start, we would like to invite Vajra Master Yeshe to lead us in reciting the text on the generation of Bodhicitta.
Please follow me to recite the text on the generation of Bodhicitta. Namo, in front of our root Guru, the Master of all Masters, we pay homage with no difference, in order that all sentient beings will be able to attain Buddhahood. May our minds in practicing the profound yogas flourish. Okay, let's invite Vajra Master Pemal Hadran to enlighten us with the talk on the Dharma practice of this session.
We are to talk about the 7th session of mind training today. There are several important notes in this session. First, is the fusing with the universe the same as in attaining Buddhahood, as there are many people with near-death experience having a phenomenon that they seem to have fused with the universe. They always considered that if they could fuse with the universe as one, is it equivalent to attaining Buddhahood, or there are some people with a little bit extraordinary power wondering that they have attaining Buddhahood, or are there any signs? Therefore, we are to talk about this. Second, there are many people could not tell the differences between gods and Buddhas. Are there any differences between gods and Buddhas after all? Is the power of gods equivalent to those of Buddhas? Third, what is our popular Heart Sutra in Buddhism talking about after all? What is its relationship with Dharmadhatu? Moreover, there is a phrase of seeing your own self-nature and attaining Buddhahood as quoted by many people. It has conveyed an illusion that seeing the appearance of nature of Dharmadhatu is the same as seeing your self-nature. Is it equivalent to attaining Buddhahood? There are 3 criteria to become a Buddha, and what are they? As some people were not aware of those 3 criteria, therefore, they thought that they had become Buddhas or it would be easy to become a Buddha. Fourth, there are 3 phases of after death according to the appearance of different phenomena. They are so different that they could vary a lot into 3 phases. What should we as practitioners, or any sattvas, practice to cope with every phase of those 3 diverse environments? Why should it happen like that? We will talk about this topic on those situations today. We organized 2 large seminars at Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center on October 9 and 15, 2011 respectively. 3 renowned speakers were invited from overseas, an expert, a doctor, and a professor in the world who have had enormous research on near-death experience for decades to give a lecture on the existence of life after death. One of the speakers was Dr. Peter Fenwick. He is a doctor with expertise in brain and neurology, and he is the one on the screen now. At the end of his speech, he introduced a man who claimed to have had a near-death experience. That is, he revived after death. During the period of his death, he experienced a phenomenon of fusing with the universe alike. What is that phenomenon after all? Let's see what was said in the video clipping. You have to pay attention to every sentence said in the video because I will ask you questions that what did that sentence mean.
So I'm going to play you one last video before I end, and this is the video of a man who I think in his NDE has got furthest. He has, he says, experienced what the universe is and what our role in it is. Now you may all think that, okay, well, what sort of guy was he? Well, I'll tell you exactly what sort of person he was. He was an air traffic controller. And the sort of man he was that he was at Manchester Airport in England, in the UK, and there was fog at Heathrow. And so what they do when there's fog at Heathrow, they put planes into a holding pattern. And then when the planes are getting low on fuel, they take them out and send them to an airport where they can land. Well, this was the time when Concorde was flying. The first plane to call in was an ordinary passenger plane, so he immediately gave it priority to land. Then another passenger plane called in, So he had to get that one in and gave that one second priority. And then the Comet called in. The Comet, remember, was the first jet airliner. Called in and said they were in a terrible situation. Unless they could get an immediate landing, they would run out of fuel. And so he now had 3 planes in an emergency on the approach to Manchester Airport. He got them all down safely. So that's the sort of guy he is. Now, in this video clip, because his experience is so deep, he gets very emotional. You'll actually see him crying on the video clip. And he has a very clear idea of what the universe is. He says that, when you merge with the universe, it is universal consciousness. He also says that you never die. So this is his account. So we never die.
Pouring into me now, I had absolutely no doubt. Nor do I have any doubt now. It is impossible to die. Where one goes is directly related to what you've done, call it here. And when you die, and if you go through the process that I went through, you will get what you deserve. I think I was very fortunate to get as far as I did. And I realize there's no guarantee that I'll get there again. It depends on what I do with the rest of my life, right up to the moment of death. In my opinion, because I don't want to offend people's beliefs or upset anyone, it is as simple as that. You cannot die, and you will get exactly and precisely what you deserve. You can live forever. I've called it a game in the past. It's a game of consequence. It's, in a sense, remorseless. But nobody judges you. You judge yourself. You cannot lie. You cannot cheat. Not there you can't. You just cannot. You're faced with it. There it is. And you have to accept it. Nobody says you've been bad, this, that, and the other. You do it. You know better than anyone, because it's your thoughts and your motives and everything is in there. And you will get, not you, but one gets precisely and exactly what you deserve. And it's utterly fair. Utterly fair. I've got into the habit when I'm talking to my wife and knowing that I'm coming to do this. That's the answer. One. Not my finger. One. That's all there is. There is no you, there is no me, there is no God. You are part of, we are, everything. It's one. You're one part forever and ever. It changes. It wouldn't matter to me if the scientists are right, and they probably are, that the universe began from the Big Bang, from a singularity. It may or may not collapse back. It doesn't matter. It's one whole. We are part of it. It always has been, always will be. There is no creator. It's one.
So there you are. That's Alan's conclusion. You're responsible for what you do. So when you all leave here, watch what you do.
Talking about an aviation traffic controller Alan, Dr. Peter Fenwick spent a bit of time to describe him. My first question is, why he had to describe Alan in such a way. Anyone why it took him so long to describe Alan. Could anyone answer these two questions? Why necessary?
Homage to both gurus. I think Dr. Peter Fenwick would like to point out that Alan's jobs required reasoning, ins and outs, and calmness, but he demonstrated sensational feelings by then. I believe Dr. Fenwick would like to highlight that.
Okay, thanks. Please sit down. Good answer indeed. In fact, why he had to spend such a lengthy speech to describe Alan before broadcasting his videos clipping, he would like to tell that Alan is not a man of low education. He is not sensational, nor he tends to fancy something. He would like to tell that Alan is a man of ability to cope with crises with excellent sense of logics. If he were not good at logics, the planes in the air would have crashed with the difference of a minute or two. That would be highly dangerous, but he could handle his jobs precisely. His making of decision is good and consistent. He is not a man of emotion but reason. When telling his encounter of near-death experience, he was so emotional that he almost burst into tears. Thus that incident has impressed him a lot indeed. Okay. The script of Dr. Peter Fenwick highlighted that Alan had become very emotional. Besides, Alan seemed to have understood the universe well. It was said that when Alan fused with the universe, you could never die after all. That is the main point of Dr. Peter Fenwick. I would like to ask the second question now. In telling his experience, Alan said, "I have absolutely no doubt that it is impossible to die." Let's listen again to what he said.
Pouring into me now, I had absolutely no doubt. Nor do I have any doubt now. It is impossible to die.
I wanted to ask if anyone here could explain what he said. It is impossible to die. What does it mean, anyone?
Good day, gurus of both. Does it mean that flesh bodies could die but not our mind?
Yes, please sit down. That is it. He said, it is impossible to die. It means that our flesh could die, though it doesn't mean that our mind no longer exists. Thus our spiritual body exists forever, and it is for sure. There are many people with near-death experience since many years ago. There have been over tens of million people telling their experience even only in the USA. In the past, as our information network was not developed, many people experienced that but dared not voice them out. Some people experienced it and voiced out, but there was no one recording them in a clear, systematic, or researched manner. Those recordings were not announced to the world and therefore vanished. It is different nowadays. With the development of technology, these kinds of information and investigations have become very popular, and it is possible to announce them. The whole world could be aware of these cases after they were announced. In fact, it has proved one thing: it is true that we never die. Our mind will exist forever. Our spiritual body exists forever. Many questions will emerge in such a way. The third question is, where one goes after death, asked by Alan. In fact, he was saying, it is directly related to what you have done. What does it mean after all? Let's listen again clearly to what he said.
Where one goes is directly related to what you've done.
Could anyone tell me the meaning of what he said? What did he want to tell by that sentence? What does it mean?
Good day to gurus of both. Did it refer to karma? Yes. Karma is inconceivable and it dominates everything.
That's correct. Please sit down. He meant that what you had done conforming as a force, guiding you where you have to go. Dharma names this force as karma, and they are collectively called karma. Okay. Here comes the fourth question. Alan said, if you had gone through the same process as I did when you died. Why did he say if? In his status by then, he recovered the ability of foreseeing to some extent. He was well aware of the truth of the universe by then. He understood well that other people might not go through the process as he did. Not everyone could see what he had seen. Therefore, he said, if you could go through the process as I did, you then get what you deserved. Although you had not revived completely, when your power recovers to a percentage of 30% to 50%, you will know many things, and what you should know. You should know something to a certain extent. That is what you deserved. He said, I think that I was very fortunate to get this far as I did. He felt that he had gone very far, and in fact he did. He said, I realized that this is no guarantee for me to reach there again. Thus, he revived from death. If he died again, he would not get to the same place again. It depends on what he has done. I would like to ask if anyone understood what he had said. Let's listen again to what he said.
Call it here. And when you die, and if you go through the process that I went through, you will get what you deserve. I think I was very fortunate to get as far as I did. And I realize there's no guarantee that I'll get there again. It depends on what I do.
What did he want to tell according to what he said? Could anyone answer?
Good day to gurus of both. I think that he was telling rules of cause and effect.
That's correct. Please sit down. Let's see, he was telling, if you get through the same process I went through. It does not apply to everyone who will have the same process as he did after death. They may not enter the same environment. For example, some people could not recover their self-nature or Buddha nature, that power. Some people were even reborn right after death, and that is really rapid. Some will be frozen in the process. They were supposed to go through 3 phases and then to be reborn. They may be frozen for a very long time before they could move. Therefore, there are many different phenomena emerging, and it is not certain that everyone would be fortunate as he was. He realized that he was very lucky to go into that realm. There is no guarantee as a matter of fact. Moreover, as he said, it depends on what he did. Then what does it depend on? There are 2 things. First, that is karma. Something good or bad you have done. What force they conform would lead you to some places. The second is, did you practice while you were alive? Practice means performing training. This training will enable your spiritual power and your understanding of everything to reach a certain degree. With the training of your ability to a certain extent, the clearer you understand, the easier you reach that place. That depends on your karma, and karma consists of one thing: practice power. Whether you have practiced this training or not has been very crucial. I have to ask you the 5th question. Alan said, for the rest of my life right to the moment of death. In my opinion, I don't want to offend others' beliefs or upsetting anyone. It is simple as that. You cannot die. Let's listen to what he said.
For the rest of my life, right up to the moment of death. In my opinion, because I don't want to offend people's beliefs or upset anyone, it is as simple as that. You cannot die.
Okay. I don't want to offend others' beliefs or upsetting anyone. It is simple as that. What is the implicit meaning of this sentence? Could anyone answer? You seem to be silent today. If you do not answer, then I will answer this question myself. The meaning of what he said is that, the worldly cognition in this temporary time and space, on the globe, and the current limit reached by science, by some religions nowadays, has a great distance and many different aspects as to the environments we could see after death, our cosmos, or the truth of our lives. Thus, their realm of knowledge has not yet reached the degree of trueness. On the other hand, Alan's own experience reached there, and he meant that. Okay. Here comes the 6th question. He said, you will get exactly and precisely what you deserved. You will live forever. I call it a game of prosperity. This is a game of consequence. It is in a sense remorseless. What does it mean of the above sentence? First let's listen carefully to what he said.
And you will get exactly and precisely what you deserve. You can live forever. I've called it a game in the past. It's a game of consequence. It's, in a sense, remorseless.
What did they mean in his saying? Could anyone answer? What were its implicit meanings?
Remorseless is that we have to be responsible for what we have done. You reap what you sow is that karma would not be offset in any circumstances. Therefore, it is remorseless, a so-called a game of consequence.
Good, thanks. That's correct. We now talk about, exactly and precisely, you get what you deserved. It means that preordained fate is absolutely fair, exactly and precisely. The game of prosperity means that your spiritual body is to derive forever. What to derive? You will use your spiritual body to produce a desire or a state of force continuously, tangling yourselves with some materials again. Then you will be reborn, evolving into different forms of lives. There will be many lives for you to emerge in birth and death, and they are forever. It is a game of derivation, duplicating without a stop. It is also a game of consequence, and the game of consequence is that the effect must come after its cause. Whatsoever the cause produces its corresponding effect. It is inescapable as rules of cause and effect. It is remorseless because when the preordained fate has emerged and formed, there is nothing to pull it back. In fact, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni did teach us that if we have seeded a cause, we could change it or remove it by confession, completely preventing the effect maturing from its cause. Therefore, transforming or changing some bad causes into good causes is feasible. The question is, did you know how to practice, and what should you do before the deadline of retribution of cause has formed? So it is necessary to rectify the mind rectification. It is called practice by using these methods. The best method taught by Lord Buddha Shakyamuni is to confess. Furthermore, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni pointed out that we should confess any seeded causes within 3 years, as stated clearly in the Buddhist classics. In fact, the effect has formed and connected completely for any force over 3 years. There is no way to remove it completely. Until then, your confession will have one outcome, like retribution for heavy karma, and the retribution of effect is not to be removed. This is indeed remorseless that there is no appeal, for there is no appeal mechanism. No matter I have had my reason, or I feel that it was right to do it, or I don't deserve that retribution of effect, there is no way to argue because it itself is remorseless. Even you consider yourself right, but there is no way to change that outcome, and that is remorseless. Okay. Here comes the 7th question. He said, nobody judges you, you judge yourself. You cannot lie, you just cannot in that environment and status. He said that it was possible and you could not in that environment and in that status. He said, you will face to it. There it is. And you have to accept it. Let's listen clearly to what he said.
But nobody judges you. You judge yourself. You cannot lie. You cannot cheat. Not there you can't. You just cannot. You're faced with it. There it is. And you have to accept it.
Okay. Could anyone explain the meaning of what he said?
Good day, gurus of both. My understanding is that the karma triggered by our ideas is infallible. It could not be increased or decreased. Thus, you will deserve what you have done. This is what I understood.
Good. Please sit down. There is a most important sentence in what he said, you have to accept it. Let's take a look at what he said. Nobody judges you, you judge yourself. In fact, there are 3 phases after we die, and Alan was in the first phase. In the first phase, he entered the environment of Dharmadhatu, and therefore witnessed that situation. During the first phase of judgment, you could see what you have done in fact. If your self-nature emerges well or its degree is comparatively higher, it is very difficult for you to add anything there, anything faked or self-deceiving. You just can't do it because it is very clear in that situation. When your self-nature is clear, when it has recovered to a higher degree. Therefore, you could not lie. He felt that it was he judging himself, not others. He revived from death and he just could not enter the third phase. If he had entered the third phase, he would have faced another judgment. Another judgment would be judged by someone else. It depends on which realm of spirit you enter. Once you entered that realm, there would be someone else in that realm to judge you. For example, you will be judged by American courts after arriving in the USA, or British courts in the UK, or Indian courts in India. There is a near-death experience case in Hong Kong. He is a customs officer, if I remember it correctly. He had an accident while catching hawkers and he was heavily wounded and sent to a hospital. He fell into a coma, entering the status of near death. The phenomenon emerged after he had revived from death. By then he said, "I saw a judge claiming to be Yamaraja judging me." Why some people considered that they judged themselves while some were judged by the third party, it depends on the environment and the status you entered by then. And Alan was lucky to have entered the status of that Dharma, therefore, he saw that he judged himself. I would like to explain to you first. If you could pass the judgment process of judging yourself, and you know how to fuse with Dharmadhatu, you could recover your self-nature to attain Buddhahood. Good. Many people said that seeing your self-nature will be able to attain Buddhahood as told by the school of Zen. Some practitioners saw their self-nature, but does it signify that really seeing the self-nature will be able to attain Buddhahood? In fact, it is not the case. Seeing the self-nature, merely witnessing the emergence of self-nature, as Alan could really see the emergence of his self-nature and entered that Dharma. When you see the emergence of your self-nature, you feel its emergence and you have entered Dharmadhatu with one foot to some extent. It means that you will have an opportunity to attain Buddhahood, but it does not mean that you have attained Buddhahood. The real meaning of attaining Buddhahood is that you have fused with the Dharmadhatu. Only by then we could call it as attaining Buddhahood. In fact, there have been many practitioners and many of them were with great achievement before us, such as Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. He had been practicing for 800 years. He could preserve his fleshy body for such a long time. During his lengthy practice of sitting in meditation, he tried countless times of seeing the self-nature. He did enter Dharmadhatu for countless times, seeing the emergence of his self-nature. But he failed very time. He just could not fuse with it, therefore, he could not attain Buddhahood. Therefore, we, average men, dare to say that we had once seeing the self-nature, or once seeing the self-nature in our practice and claim that we have attained Buddhahood. That is only a misunderstanding after all. If you could not fuse with Dharmadhatu, you could not and will not be able to attain Buddhahood because you have no way to recover your status of self-nature completely. Of course, there is a case in human beings. For example, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni entered that Dharmadhatu while he was alive in the world. He fused with it and completely recovered his self-nature to reach the achievement of attaining Buddhahood. That is the way he practiced to attain Buddhahood finally. Therefore, seeing self-nature is just only you know some real truth at that very moment, but when you have quitted that environment, you have left the state of this Dharma realm, then you will lose most or even all of this ability. For example, Dr. Peter Fenwick, in his farewell dinner, asked us a question. He said, "To be honest, I will tell you that I have been meditating for about 50 years, but concerning Buddhism, there are many areas that I cannot understand or comprehend. So during the dinner, he asked a lot of questions, mostly concerning Buddhism. He wanted to prove the truth therein, ignoring whatever religious aspect. All in all, if you can give me an answer, I will believe in that. During that time, he asked a question. I have a friend. Once during his meal, he suddenly felt that he has entered that state mentioned by Alan. He would like to ask me whether he has attained Buddhahood. When he has left that state, he felt that he is already a Buddha, that is to say he has already achieved. He asked me, is that so? We did answer him this way. At that moment, we say that the so-called seeing self nature, at best we can say is that you are a beginning Bhumi or primary Bhumi Bodhisattva. In fact, from the primary Bhumi up to attaining Buddhahood, there are 10 Bhumis, that is to say, 10 stages or levels. You have to upgrade yourself layer by layer. Of course, there may be some Dharma practitioners, who are so well practiced, that they may take only a very short time, starting from the primary Bhumi, through the second Bhumi, to reach the third Bhumi swiftly. However, there are many other practitioners, who may have to go through numerous kalpas, with constant reincarnations. It all depends on whether there are guru guiding or teaching him, and is also determined by his own standard of understanding and perception. In fact, we have already said before in the Lake of Lotus, the 10 Bhumis, from the primary Bhumi to the second Bhumi, and from the second Bhumi to the third Bhumi, actually required certain conditions. These, in fact, have already been said before. Actually, we need to know what is emptiness, and you need to have a clear understanding of the principle of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Otherwise it is impossible for you to go up from the primary Bhumi to the second Bhumi, and then from the second Bhumi to the third Bhumi. So we said to Dr. Peter Fenwick, the environment seen by your friend, is only what we described as seeing self-nature. He has just seen the sudden emergence of Dharma nature, but it does not equivalent to the condition of attaining Buddhahood. Basically, he cannot fuse with Dharma realm, therefore he cannot be called a Buddha. Moreover, he need to go through the 10 Bhumis in between. That is to say, 10 different stages before he has an opportunity to attain Buddhahood. Only by achieving Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi could one be able to attain Buddhahood, is confirmed. That is, one's awakening has recovered to 100% with absolute correctness and without any deviation. That is Samyak Sambodhi. There is nothing in this world superior to it. When Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi has been achieved, then attaining Buddhahood could be confirmed. We said that his friend had not reached that level, therefore, it was impossible for his friend to attain Buddhahood. As to this topic, Alan said that we judged ourselves as a matter of fact. We just have to accept it. We have to accept it. You cannot lie or you cannot cheat. That is what he said. Then why Alan had to emphasize accepting it in such a way, we have just mentioned. There is no one judging you in the first phase, but there will be someone in the second phase. No matter in which phase, you have to remember, do not try to cheat yourself or lie. Self-nature will emerge in the first phase, preventing you from lying. Then why you could not lie in the second phase? At that time, you have no self-nature to appear again, but a third party will judge you. Not that your self-nature will emerge, but that the God coexists at birth, as mentioned in the third session of the post-death world episode. I have mentioned that the God coexists at birth is a memory system. It has existed when you were born. It is a whole recording system of 360 degrees which records everything. It is a rigorous system recording not only the environment of the scenes, anything seen, but also your triggered ideas and thoughts, everything, or even your feelings. There will be the third party to judge you, for example Yamaraja. Different titles will be given according to different religions. We don't have to care about who will that be. All in all, no matter you would be judged by British courts or American courts, they would play the memory card with your information, i.e. the God coexists at birth. Therefore, you cannot lie in fact. No matter in which phase, you just cannot lie. That is why Alan said, you cannot lie. You cannot cheat, not there. Since self-nature honestly reveals everything as it naturally is, you cannot lie in that status. In case you wanted to lie, there would be a resistance. You don't want to face it or to accept it. You don't want to admit what you have done. Or you may say that you just did not want that to be by then. That will form a status of resistance. Once that resistance emerges, you just could not fuse with Dharmadhatu. You will lose the only opportunity to recover self-nature and attaining Buddhahood. Alan, therefore, told you not to resist, you have to accept it. But I still have to ask you a question. He knew completely that he was not to resist or to lie. But why he still fell out and revived from death? He therefore could not fuse with Dharmadhatu. Why he could not succeed, that is the question. He said, you have to accept it. But you have to remember, accepting it is not equivalent to fusing with Dharmadhatu successfully. If you accept it, you may have the opportunity of fusing with Dharmadhatu. What is fusion and where is it from? Fusion means that when our self-nature could recover to a certain extent but not necessary 100%. If we could enter Dharmadhatu in a just fine status, for example with a just fine degree to enter, we then could start experiencing the existence of Dharmadhatu. In fact, Dharmadhatu exists always, but that our awakening is very vague and it has not yet recovered to that extent. If we recovered to that extent, we could, in fact, feel and experience the existence of Dharmadhatu. What is fusion? It is the extent you have reached to recover self-nature and awakening. If you could recover self-nature to 100%, it means that you could fuse with it. When you formally fuse with Dharmadhatu, you could attain Buddhahood by then. Then what is attaining Buddhahood? You could enter Dharmadhatu any time, any place, and it should not be as what Alan said, I am very fortunate and I wait for the good luck, I don't know why I could enter it. What does Dharmadhatu mean? It is the realm for the existence of the Dharma nature, which is called Dharmadhatu. This Dharma nature is the self-nature every one of us possesses, and it is called Buddha nature or Dharma nature, and they are actually the same. We ourselves possess this Dharma nature, and it has come with our birth with infinite potential power. If this potential power could emerge, we then could feel the existence of Dharmadhatu. If we could fuse with it, we could recover 100% of our great power to attain Buddhahood. Once you have recovered it, you don't have to wait for the good luck as Alan did. You could enter Dharmadhatu any time. On the contrary, if you have not fused or you could not fuse with it, you could not yet attain Buddhahood. There is no guarantee that you would have another opportunity to enter Dharmadhatu in future. So, what is attaining Buddhahood? It is often heard that attaining Buddhahood has been so superior and mysterious. What is attaining Buddhahood? After all, Buddha means awakening in fact. Attaining Buddhahood means that we could recover our awakening. What is awakening? It is not ordinary awakening but 100% Samyak Sambodhi. It is the best and pure awakening without any deviation. You could be aware of the existence of Dharmadhatu, or you could even enter Dharmadhatu. You could also possess that great power, almighty power. You don't need to enter samsara and you will not be drawn by the force of samsara. Only by attaining that status can it be regarded as attaining Buddhahood. Therefore, the real Buddhism should be called awakening religion by its real meaning, teaching the methods of awakening to recover one's own awareness. Therefore, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni said, any worldly teachings guiding you to recover your awakening could be called Buddhism as long as they meet the principles of the 3 Dharma seals or 4 Dharma seals. We will explain the 3 Dharma seals later on. Hence, Buddhism should also be called a teaching of guiding awareness. Many people do not know how to tell the difference between gods and Buddhas. They think that God's power is as great as that of Buddhas. In fact, What are the differences between gods, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas? Where do they live? Gods have spiritual bodies living in heavenly realm, while most of the bodhisattva live in heavenly realm as well. However, if bodhisattva vows are so very good and great, wishing to save sentient beings, they would descend themselves to lower levels to stay in the realm of desire or the human world to save sentient beings, and not living in the heavenly realm temporarily. In fact, most bodhisattvas live in heavenly realm. Buddhas can use Dharma nature to stay, remain, and exist in Dharmadhatu without revealing any forms or status. Buddhas can also enter and remain in heavenly realm and also exist in any places. That is to say, by the great power of a Buddha, he can stay and exist in Dharmadhatu, heavenly realm, or realm of desire. They can choose to manifest or not to manifest in front of you, but gods cannot do that. They are confined to living in certain spheres in heavenly realm. Besides, gods have never seen Dharmadhatu and hardly could they enter it. On the contrary, bodhisattvas could decide which level to stay or live according to different situations and their vow power and abilities, for there are 18 different levels in heavenly realm. Therefore, it depends on how high the power of a bodhisattva. Whether they can descend to the realm of desire or other levels of spheres, it all depends on their abilities and vow power and whether they would like to be there and other factors. Perhaps some people have entered it as Alan, an ordinary man without any religion. But when dying, he had had an opportunity to have recovered Dharma nature to enter this realm. Some bodhisattvas have never seen it. It is merely that they were taught or have read some phenomena in Buddhist classics, but they never formally entered that. Or some of them entered it, but perhaps they forgot after entering, for some would not have previous memory after rebirth. Then they just don't know. Buddha has fused with Dharmadhatu completely. He could enter the status of Dharmadhatu or to leave there any time. That is their difference. As gods could not fuse with Dharmadhatu, their self-nature could not recover completely. Their power is a little bit higher than those of human beings, but they have not yet attained Buddhahood. It applies to bodhisattvas as well. They cannot fuse with Dharmadhatu, for their power of self-nature has not yet recovered completely. They are a bit higher than human beings depending on their levels. All in all, they cannot yet attain Buddhahood. Buddha is that his Buddha nature or self-nature has been 100% recovered completely. He has therefore formally attained Buddhahood, and he is called a Buddha. Gods may or may not know the existence of Dharmadhatu. If no one teaches them, or they have never learned Buddhist teachings, or they never read any Buddhist sutras, the majority of their memory would be erased even though they have entered Dharmadhatu after death in future and then get reborn to be gods again. The situation is the same as those with near-death experience. While entering Dharmadhatu, they felt that they knew the secret of the universe clearly, though most of their memory would be erased when they revived from death. As Alan said, "I don't understand, I felt that I completely understood that situation by then. But when I returned to life from death, I discovered that the majority of my memory was gone. I was unable to experience that feeling and the secrets I knew by then again. I should understand, but I could not remember." He said that he tried hard to recall, but he just could not. Gods have this phenomenon as well. Their power is a bit stronger than that of human beings, but it does not mean that they could recover all the power. They would lose their past memory of the existence of Dharmadhatu. What should we resort to? We have to understand Buddhist teachings, to read Buddhist sutras, and to practice further so as to make reference to and confirm the truth taught by the Lord Buddha. We have to check out the status being developed, to enhance our memory so as to bring out our potential. Therefore, gods may or may not know the existence of Dharmadhatu. Knowing it or not makes a big difference. Bodhisattvas will know that it is in their memory, or they have practiced to a certain extent. Or they understand after reading Buddhist classics, or their gurus or other people teaching Buddhist teachings told them or described the situation to them. They would then know the existence of Dharmadhatu. If you really understand Buddhist Dharma, and you have aroused bodhicitta to save sentient beings. You have the opportunity to be a bodhisattva. Then who could be called bodhisattva? Those Dharma practitioners who have received and upheld the bodhisattva precepts could be called bodhisattvas, otherwise, they could not be called bodhisattva. As to gods, they may or may not know what the phenomena will be when fusing with the Dharmadhatu. It is possible for them to know something if they are good enough. It seems that Alan knew that as well. If he could succeed in fusing with Dharmadhatu at that time, his situation would have been very good. Although it is impossible to describe how good it would be, but it is most important to know the need to fuse with it. After fusing, you will recover your self-nature and awareness to attain Buddhahood. And bodhisattvas know it well that if they could fuse with Dharmadhatu, they could attain Buddhahood, recovering 100% of awareness as well. If you laity here do not know this situation until I tell you the truth by now, it means that the Buddhist teachings you have learned have not been up to standard. Thus, you have not yet learned the things you need to know, but that you know something superficial after all. You don't even know this most important thing. Its influence has been very great indeed. Gods are also constrained by the force of samsara. Whether bodhisattvas are subject to it or not will have to depend upon which levels of heaven they are in. If you live in the Pure Land formed by Buddha Amitabha, it does not rely on your power but that of Buddha Amitabha. It isolates you from the control of the force of samsara temporarily. You are not to be dragged to it, and it does not resort to your power. Whether or not bodhisattva would be constrained to the force of samsara, it depends on the level of heaven they live by then. Buddha will not be constrained by the force of samsara for sure. Then what are the conditions for us to fuse with Dharmadhatu successfully? The first condition is that you have recovered self-nature to a certain extent, enabling you to experience or to feel the existence of Dharmadhatu. Thus you could enter Dharmadhatu. In such a way, you will have the opportunity to fuse with it, but that opportunity does not exist always. Thus, you must have the opportunity of fusing with it, or you just could not experience Dharmadhatu. If you could not enter Dharmadhatu, it is impossible for you to attain Buddhahood. That is the first condition of the three to attain Buddhahood. The second is, you must know what to do after entering Dharmadhatu. In the case of Alan, he knew nothing. He knew that he had to fuse with it after entering, but what to do if he could not? One thing is lacking. But what is lacking? The third question is that you have to understand and apply the status of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Knowing and applying are of two different situations and meanings. After knowing the truth, you have to apply this emptiness, neither existence nor voidness to achieve fusion. That is the second condition you need to possess. But who is to teach you? It is of course your gurus. If your gurus could not teach you or explain to you what we have just said, it means that he himself is not aware of or understood it. Because he does not understand, and it is impossible for you to understand it. In other words, it takes no average gurus but some gurus who would be able to explain that to you, to teach you what is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, to control and to apply emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. With the teaching of those gurus, you will know the real path of practice. Why, when you really entered that realm, the status of Dharmadhatu, your self-nature will help you. Alan knew nothing including Dharma practice, but why he could know so much and the reasons of those phenomena. Not wholly though, he could tell some Dharma practice such as emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. He did not understand a bit, therefore, he could not enter it. In case your guru had taught you while you were alive and you knew that, there would be a better opportunity for you to attain Buddhahood by better application after reaching there. If some people have to comprehend without the help of the guru, they think they are clever enough or being self-centered. That guru often imposes rules on me with so many don'ts. Why should I listen to him? I could just follow what Lord Buddha Shakyamuni said. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni taught a lot of classics. All I have to do is to read those classics. Even you comprehend on your own, to what extent you could understand Buddhist classics. You may have listened to many people explaining Heart Sutra to you, but how much have you understood? Did those explain the truth of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness in Heart Sutra? Could they explain that dimension? If not, you just could not understand what is it all about in Heart Sutra. You just know how to recite it at most. Okay, even you know how to comprehend it yourself. You have to comprehend by reading Buddhist classics, and it takes 3 countless eons. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni said, if you practice exoteric Buddhism by the teaching of the Buddha, you need 3 countless eons. What is 3 countless eons? It refers to countless reincarnations and unknown billions of years. It is light year, not year, countless light years. That is 3 countless eras. In that long period of time, you need to comprehend it slowly. Thus, you will see self-nature after death in this life, but you could not see self-nature after your 10th life. You may see self-nature in your 12th life, but you might not grasp that opportunity. Therefore, you have to experience countless lives and deaths, repeating it continuously. As Alan comprehended himself, and he saw Buddha nature, but why he could not enter, and he had to wait for another opportunity. Do you have an opportunity to succeed after repeating countless experience? It depends on whether someone has taught you what is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, Buddha nature or Dharmadhatu in one of your countless lives. You will have the real opportunity to practice and to confirm that after you have been taught of the above. The third condition is, have you got a guru, and has your guru taught you anything? Did he teach you what is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness? Did he teach you how to apply and practice to attain the steps to success? Okay. Assuming that you were taught, and the question would be, do you know how to maintain the status of self-nature, Buddha nature, or emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, and could you maintain their thought domains? How to maintain it? One method is to comprehend it yourselves in 3 Asamkhya Kalpas, while the other is to be taught by your guru. Then, what kinds of gurus should they be? You need no average guru to teach you emptiness. Did he teach you how to maintain and practice it? Or the guru teaches you everything? Okay. Here comes the 8th question. Alan said, no one told you if it would be good or bad to do it. No one gives you any guidance. There is none. You yourselves say so, and you understand that. You understand yourself more than anyone else. You will know it in future. You act in such a way because you have not been aware of it since you were born. Self-nature emerges when you reached that place, and it enables you to differentiate right from wrong. You even start to differentiate right and wrong, knowing what to do is right or wrong. You cannot lie or cheat. You could not use another theory to prove that is right. Self-nature enables you to differentiate right and wrong completely. You need your gurus to teach you how to differentiate right and wrong. You no longer need your guru's teaching when you have reached that place, and you would know it naturally. He said, your thoughts, your motives, and everything in there. You could not deny. You will get exactly and precisely what you deserve of it. Absolutely fair. Utterly fair. Let's listen again to what he said.
Nobody says you've been bad, this, that, and the other. You do it. You know better than anyone, because it's your thoughts and your motives and everything is in there. And you will get, not you, but one gets precisely and exactly what you deserve. It is utterly fair.
Now the question is, your thoughts, your motives, and everything is in there? It includes your feelings and the status of the people's interaction there. What does it mean? Could anyone?
Gurus of both. My understanding is that it is of all dimensions, 360 degrees, which enables us to know that every direction is clear, assembling a stream of light. I would say it is a ball falling into water. He could tell every dimension of it.
Thanks. Okay. Please sit down. I didn't ask this aspect. Let me answer that. He said, your thoughts, your motives, and everything is in there means you still had your thoughts, memory and judgment at that time. When you feel the existence of those, you would not be in the status of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Once you have a little thought of those, it is impossible for you to fuse with Dharmadhatu. You could not apply that thought, memory, and judgment to fit into the status of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. You may say, my guru did not teach me what is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, therefore, I don't know how to fit into it. After I have taught you of that, you should start to know by now. When you reach that place, you have to know how to fit in. If you could not fit in, you will subside from Dharmadhatu. It is the case that Alan had subsided from it. You would subside from Dharmadhatu and that will be in vain. Okay, some people did say that, some gurus might have entered Dharmadhatu, or they have never entered it but that they only heard the death experience, or they have read some Buddhist classics mentioning that. Then they thought that they were smart, teaching their followers that, we don't need to correct our behavioral action, just tell ourselves forever that we are the best and we can fuse with Dharmadhatu. Now is here and now and why we have to practice here and now. There are many people practicing here and now. They said, if we always tell ourselves that we are the best while we are alive here and now, we just tell ourselves that we are the best and we are perfect. Then when we reach Dharmadhatu by there in future, we tell ourselves again we are the best and we will fuse with Dharmadhatu. I need no judgment and no judgment is required as long as I feel that I am the best. Some people do teach their followers in such a way. That is really pathetic. Those taught by them are really pathetic. Deceiving oneself and anesthetizing oneself, could it really help others to attain Buddhahood? That is the main point. Alan just said, in self-nature, you know it clearly, what is right and wrong. You cannot lie and you cannot cheat. But your guru told you that is not necessary. You suggest to hypnotize yourselves every day while you are alive, telling yourselves to lie and anesthetizing yourselves every day. We tell ourselves that we are the best, we have no fault. There is no behavioral action to be corrected and it is not necessary to do Dharma practice. We will naturally be there after death. We naturally tell ourselves that we are the best and we can fuse with it. We don't need to do Dharma practice every day. So comfortable it would be. That is, practicing Dharma happily. We must be very happy because we don't have to tell ourselves that we are wrong and at fault. But there is one thing I would like to tell you clearly. Self-deceiving and anesthetizing are not equivalent to the status of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. When they are not equivalent, it is a failure. This truth is simple. If you cannot fuse with Dharmadhatu, you are doomed to fail. That kind of guru's teaching is absolutely wrong and it would cause the followers to accumulate misconducts and karma continuously. Because they say that you do not have to rectify your behavioral action and you will accumulate misconducts continuously. Therefore, those misconducts will continue to exist continuously. Those karma and wrongdoings will accumulate continuously. Then you will indulge yourselves in some wrong behavioral actions and you don't have to do Dharma practice. That karmic force will dominate you seriously. You could tell yourselves not to worry as your guru told you, don't worry. This phenomenon will emerge when you die in the first phase. As long as you could enter Dharmadhatu, only your self-nature will emerge in that phase and all karmic force will stop there. In that environment, there is no karmic force pulling you to be reborn. You are absolutely safe in that Dharmadhatu. There is only one thing existing, your self-nature. So long as you could anesthetize yourself that you have done nothing wrong and you are the best, you train yourself like that every day and eventually you could fuse with it. In fact, it is impossible. Alan told us the answer already that it is not possible. He said that self-nature is very clear and it will tell you what is right and what is wrong. You judge yourself and that self-nature judges you. That self-nature is yours but you could not lie and you could not anesthetize yourself. You just cannot do it. It naturally tells you that you are right or wrong. In that status, even there is no second karmic force pulling you but your own mind force. Could your mind force be cheated to achieve that, we could tell you that it was impossible. Alan did tell us that it is impossible. Therefore, it could prove that those gurus' teachings are wrong, bringing serious consequences to their followers. We use the phrase, to lead the blind by the blind, to illustrate that. Their gurus are blind. In fact, they don't understand that truth. They don't even understand what is self-nature and dharma nature, but they have become gurus teaching their followers. Those followers are blind as well, since they don't understand. The situation has become leading the blind by the blind. Like Alan, anyone could tell the truth even if they don't know anything about Buddhism. Within one's own self-nature, you cannot lie. You cannot do it even you want to, or I want to, or he wants to. It is impossible to consider that or to do that. It is necessary to remember that our practice should not be as told by those gurus, that we should anesthetize ourselves and practice here and now every day, telling ourselves that we are correct and perfect and we could fuse with it. It is not possible. In fact, on the contrary, you will get it much worse to a great extent. When you fall off rapidly from this phase to the third phase, and when the official trial by a third party appears, at that time you begin to become aware of something wrong, you will realize that you will face serious consequence. All the karmic force of your wrongdoings will be pulling you. Until then you will fall into somewhere very bad for rebirth, and it would be too late. Therefore, those gurus don't know what is dharma nature nor self nature, or dharmadayatu. By imagination or reading some books, Buddhist classics, or hearing some near-death experience told by somebody, they make up something to teach their followers, and that would lead to a total failure eventually. These are neither Buddhist teachings nor Buddhism. All their doings will jeopardize Buddhism and Buddhist teachings. Teaching of here and now is dangerous, and you have to remember that well. Unfortunately, that kind of gurus is very popular. When gurus say, you don't have to correct your behavioral actions. We only need to tell ourselves to practice Dharma happily or to recite mantra continuously, and that will be enough. You don't need to know any truth or emptiness, right or wrong, as long as you practice here and now happily will do. These teachings are even much worse than those of other religions. Other religions will not teach you in such a way. They would ask you to do some virtuous deeds. You have to correct your mistakes and you are to do some confession or repentance. Therefore, if those so-called gurus do nothing of the above, the consequences will be very serious. Here comes the 9th question, fusing into one. It is the most interesting part, how to fuse into one. Alan said, I know I have gone very far. This is the answer. That is the answer that all sentient beings would like to know in the whole universe. How could we get liberated from all control and restraints to get eternal life and freedom forever? That is the answer, and the meaning of life is in there. That is the answer. The answer is one. Oneness, that means the whole. There is no you and there is no me, no God. You are part of us, a part of the whole. That is one, you are one part, forever is. Let's listen to what he said.
I've got into the habit when I'm talking to my wife and knowing that I'm coming to do this. That's the answer. One. Not my finger. One. That's all there is. There is no you, there is no me, there is no God. You are part of, we are, everything. It's one. You're one part, forever and ever.
Before I ask the question, let's see the 10th question. For all is said that there is essentially about fusing into one. Let's listen again to what he said.
It changes. It wouldn't matter to me if the scientists are right, and they probably are, that the universe began from the Big Bang, from a singularity. It may or may not collapse back. It doesn't matter. It's one whole. We are part of it. It's always has been, always will be. There is no creator. It's one.
He said, any changes will not affect me. It means that nothing can affect you in that self-nature. In that situation, nothing could affect you. That is to say, a situation with no pulling force which I just mentioned. There is no karmic force or any pulling force having an effect on you. He said, if scientists are right, they mentioned that the universe was from a big bang coming from one point, it is possible or impossible to collapse. Even he considered that theory is correct or wrong, that is not important. In that situation, what is most important, that is one, the whole, and we are a part of it. It is so and it will be so. There is no creator and that is one. He said that there was just no creator, therefore, he said at the very beginning, I just don't want to offend other religions saying that there are no creators. Because of the time limitation, I don't ask you questions and I explain that answer directly. What is Dharma realm? As I said that it is the sector where Buddha nature exists. What are its functions? Everything arises from it and it is the source of all dharmas. As it is the source of all dharmas, everything arises from it. As the Heart Sutra says, 5 aggregates are empty, 5 aggregates are form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. I will explain them in detail later on. Everything is nothing, fusing into one already. There is no God, no creator, no material substance. All is one body and that is Dharma realm. There is nothing in Dharma realm. What is emptiness? Neither existence nor voidness. What does it refer to after all? Not voidness means not empty. But why you said that everything is nothing? But you said, non-existence, it does not exist. What is referred here, existence or voidness, that is the essence we have to know and we will explain that in detail. However, Dharma realm is the source of all dharmas, everything arises from it. What would there be? There would naturally the existence of awareness and self-nature. Those awareness and self-nature are not material substances nor any things but they could derive many things. That is why, it is called the source of all dharmas. Many lives could be derived from it. But how does it work? Self-nature inside exceeds the Dharma realm to link with other material substances to form a life. During its evolution, it requires some procedures. That is to change from thin and scattered to high-density material substances. When self-nature emerges from the Dharma realm, it will aggregate some thin and scattered material substances first. Thin and scattered material substances are referred to light and they will emerge as light first. Thin and scattered material substances will arise and then high-density material substances follow. In such a way, some solid substances will gather slowly. Thus energy will be transformed into some things with heavy materialistic and structural substances. For example, all material things we see in the realm of desire are evolving slowly there. Light is actually a kind of material substance but is thin and scattered substance. Objects we usually see are some substances of high density. It derives slowly from the Dharma realm. Self-nature links with some material substances. In the Dharma realm, there is nothing but the existence of awareness. So do you consider that it is existing or void? I will explain that in detail later on. There is no God, creator, or any material substances and we call that Dharma realm. Nowadays, some people with near-death experience said, I had entered that status and it is also considered by many of us. That status is called universe, for they have never learned Buddhist teachings. They did not know that it should be called Dharma realm instead of universe. Why is universe not the same as Dharma realm? Because there are many galaxies in the universe and there are many material substances. Looking at the sea of galaxies, you will see that it is grand and wide without a limit. But there are many material substances and planets there. Any places with material substances cannot be called Dharma realm. According to the definition of Dharma realm, it is the sector in which the Dharma nature exists, and only Dharma nature can exist inside. All other things will not exist in the Dharma realm. On the contrary, if there is any other things exist there, that is not Dharma realm or source of Dharma. Because universe is not a source of all dharmas, therefore, this universe is not equal to Dharma realm. That is the truth. When we have to integrate in the universe, as some people said, I have to blend in the universe, it is for sure that it is not the same as fusing into the Dharma realm. Okay, what is the benefit of fusing into the Dharma realm? The benefits of fusing into the Dharma realm are that you will have eternal happiness, eternal existence, and you will never grow old or die. Alan said, we will never die. But the death mentioned by him is not the same as what we are talking about, not really the same. The death he mentioned was not of free will. It will be drawn by one's own karmic force to get linked to pigs for rebirth as a pig, to the hells for downfall to hells, to ghosts as a ghost, to the human being realm as a person in places like Ethiopia. You are to be determined by your karmic force. His so-called life and death, and the immortal spiritual body are completely without free will. Actually, this life is filled with birth, aging, sickness, death, and pain. But if you could fuse into Dharma realm, you would have eternal happiness, eternal existence, and there would be no karmic force dominating you. You would not grow old nor die. You have no limitation and constraints. You possess the greatest power, going everywhere as you like. You are eternally autonomous and there is no pain or no aggregation. In other words, you will not aggregate and accumulate any causes of pain to produce any effect. There is no law of cause and effect to dominate you. Because you don't aggregate anything, there will be no pain. So you don't need to eliminate the cause of suffering. In such a way, you don't have to learn and practice ways, or to use some methods to eliminate the cause of pain. In Buddhism, we call these methods as the Four Noble Truths, namely, suffering, aggregation, vanishing and the way. There is not any material substance burdening or confining Dharma realm and there is no consciousness either. Consciousness refers to the judgment with impurities or greed, anger, and ignorance, or some bad memories. Dharma realm is one only. What does one refer to? One means self-nature completely blending in one. I have just mentioned, there is no substance in Dharma realm. What is source of all dharmas? How did it evolve into universe and all the lives there? When self-nature exceeds Dharma realm, it will manifest in the form of energy, which is light. Light is one of the energies, a kind of thin and scattered material substance, arraying sparsely. That status is realm of form. Form is material substance, belonging to part of heavenly realm. When a Buddha surpasses Dharma realm and enters the samsara world, where will he usually stay? He usually stays in the highest sector of heavenly realm. The highest level of heavenly realm is the 18th level of heaven of ultimate heaven of form. In ultimate heaven of form, there is almost no material substance but lights. Bodhisattvas or gods with ordinary abilities don't have the ability to stay in that realm because the material substances there are too scattered and most of them cannot stay or exist there. When the self-nature of Buddha surpasses Dharma realm and emerges, it will first enter the highest level of heaven, ultimate heaven of form, and then transform into a materialistic sector, a place where the structure of material substances are of high density. So what does Heart Sutra actually talk about? In fact, Heart Sutra explains some situations in the Dharma realm. Let's try to see what Heart Sutra talks about. Heart Sutra is very important indeed. You may say that Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara is one of the disciples of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara may be generally regarded as a bodhisattva with very strong visualizing power, mind visualization ability and great free will. He referred to some bodhisattvas who possess strong and subtle practicing power, visualizing power, mind visualization power, observant power. While practicing profound prajnaparamita, when he practiced a profound visualization and reflection to a deep level. Prajnaparamita is the wisdom enabling you to reach the shore on the other side. What does that shore refer to? That shore is Dharma realm. It can help you to enter the wisdom of Dharma realm. When practicing intensely, those bodhisattvas could visualize and reflect by using those wisdom, helping you to enter Dharma realm. When entering Dharma realm, he could illuminate 5 aggregates and see that they are all empty. He could observe those reflection, understand the phenomena of everything. 5 aggregates refers to form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. Form refers to material substances. Sensation refers to all your feelings. Perception refers to thinking. Mental formation refers to all actions in motion and all kind of consciousness. All these things are pulling forces and they are empty. They are the motions of a pulling force. As modern scientists mention that they are neutrons, atoms, ions, or some electrodes deep inside a material substance, moving between anode and cathode. This kind of movement is a pulling force, but that you have to look in great detail. Who could do that? Scientists can see that level, and they have noticed that the movement inside depends on the pulling force. Those bodhisattvas practicing profound prajnaparamita could clearly see these form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, constituting all our ego and material things. All movements are from the pulling forces. Overcoming all ills and suffering. Why it could overcome all ills and suffering? Because you know that these are the movements pulled by some forces. If you could enter Dharma realm and eliminate that pulling force, all pulling forces would not have any effect on you. There will be no pain hurting you. Therefore you can overcome all your ills and sufferings. Sariputra was the senior disciple of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Because Sariputra asked Bodhisattva these questions, so Bodhisattva answered, Sariputra. It is only the movement triggered by the pulling force, but it does not exist forever. Form does not differ from emptiness, its material substances are empty and there is nothing. When the pulling force disperses, it does not exist any longer. Therefore, material substances are void. Emptiness does not differ from form, it is empty but not really void. When the pulling forces emerge again and they link, that material substance will emerge again. Emptiness could reveal the emergence of material substances. He therefore said, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. They are interchangeable and they are two as one. These interchangeable substances are of no fixed status. They would not exist forever and they change from time to time. Therefore, he said, all dharmas are empty of characteristics, void in fact, and they don't exist forever. They are not created, not annihilated. It is derived from a self-nature, but there is nothing to produce that self-nature. It is not to be destroyed. It is not impure, not pure, they are neither clean nor not clean, no particular pure or impure, it is a self-nature, a very clean thing which is not increasing, not decreasing, neither increases nor decreases. So this self-nature exists naturally, without any increase or decrease. The reason for its increase or decrease is due to other substances. It is your thought linking to other substances that triggers that. If you could understand that self-nature, you could reach that condition. Its real status is not created, not annihilated, not impure, not pure, not increasing, not decreasing. When you believe that substances could reach that position, you do understand the truth of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Therefore, there is no form in emptiness. In fact, there is no material substance in emptiness. That material substance will change and is linked by yourselves. There is no substance that would not change forever. There is no sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. There is no sensation in Dharma realm. Once the pulling force disperses, your feelings will no longer exist. No perception. When that pulling force disperses, there is no perception but self-nature. There is no mental formation in motion. There is no consciousness or any mixed ideas. When you realize how pure is this kind of self-nature, this pulling force can naturally disperse. Once you enter there, that is the status of Dharma realm. When you have recovered that self-nature, you will enter Dharma realm. Then you could overcome all ills and suffering. No pulling force could affect you. In Heart Sutra, It is said that there is no material substance inside Dharma realm or self-nature. You have to remember that no form, no sensation, perception, mental formation, consciousness. Thus there is no five aggregates. The rules of Dharma realm is that, nothing to attain. It is not the rules of cause and effect. As there is no cause and there will be no effect. As there is no cause, therefore, there will be no cause and effect of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. Many people always do not understand and they say, Heart Sutra always tells that there is nothing but we actually touch our eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. You asked us to empty them all. But could we do that? If a vehicle runs towards me while I am strolling on the street, should I treat it void or not? Do I have to stand there idly to let that vehicle run over me, or should I get away from it? When I get away from it, my consciousness is that it does exist. If you teach me to treat it as void, how could I exist in this space? I don't even know how to live in this space. How could I continue to practice? As there is no cause, there will be no cause and effect due to no forms, sounds, odor, tastes, tactile and phenomena sensations. No I element, until we come to no element of consciousness. You have to understand that Heart Sutra explains the situation of Dharma realm. It tells you that there is actually nothing inside Dharma realm. There is nothing or any pulling force to control you. You are totally free there. But you must understand that in what situation would that phenomenon emerges. Heart Sutra teaches you to understand that situation, but it does not mean to teach you to ignore a vehicle when it is running towards you. You have to understand when you die, you may have the opportunity to enter Dharma realm. How could you stay in Dharma realm? You have to understand the characteristics, functions, and attributes of Dharma realm. Once you understand, you could blend in it. If you don't understand its attributes, you just could not fuse with it. Having understood it, you could fuse with it and you would not fall off and you could attain Buddhahood. What is its special feature? Its special feature is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. What is emptiness? It means everything is formed by linking and induced by pulling force. It'll be fine if you don't link with that pulling force. Why will I pull it out? Because you have ignorance. Ignorance means that you have a misunderstanding. It would be serious if you have a misunderstanding. Why did Alan fell off and fail to blend in it? He had ignorance. What did he not understand? It seems that he knew everything and he said a lot. He just doesn't know emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Ignorance means stupidity. What stupidity? Stupidity of the higher level. That is being unable to understand emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. If you cannot understand it, you are not able to blend in Dharma realm. Therefore, any other religions, that is, other non-Buddhist religions are known as other religions. I tell you that not any sentient beings or any other religions could succeed in entering this realm and blend in it. There is not a single successful case ever. Did I make it up? Actually, you can use your reasoning to understand that. I have not made it up and I will explain to you why no one could make it, as told by many with near-death experience that they had entered Dharma realm or they had died a few times. I don't think he could make it. Why? If you know nothing about Buddhism, you just don't know what is awareness, don't know what is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. That means you don't know the special features of Dharma realm. Then how could you blend in Dharma realm? It is impossible to fuse in it successfully. You don't know what is ego attachment or Dharma attachment. What is other religion? Other religion means pursuing Dharma from outside. What is pursuing Dharma from outside? All other religions think that we have gods or a creator in helping us. There is a third party out there. When you think that there is a third party, the pulling force will emerge. When there are 2 points, there will be a pulling force. There is only one, only one. Therefore, Alan always pointed with one finger saying there was one. What does one mean? There is no 2 points. Whenever there are 2 points, there will be a pulling force. There is only one, you just blend into one, combining two into one. One point will not trigger any pulling force. Without the pulling force, you could have the opportunity to enter Dharma realm. Why other religions could not make it? Because they pursue Dharma from outside, and they think that something are out there. When you think that something is out there, the pulling force will emerge, preventing you from blending in Dharma realm. No matter what situation you enter after death, there is no way for you to attain Buddhahood, and you are unable to recover to 100% of self-nature. Therefore, Buddhahood is awareness. We use awareness to reflect and observe so as to eliminate this pulling force. As the observation ability of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni and Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara are strong, those free will saints and Dharma practitioners could also observe as well that everything is formed by pulling forces. They realized that the function of the pulling force so as to eliminate that pulling force, only Buddhism could make it. Only the religion teaching you awareness could make it. Where is ignorance from? He said that there is no ignorance in Dharma realm. You would fall off if there exists ignorance. Why? Because when you don't understand what is neither existence nor voidness, then one point will emerge naturally and it will pull out many things. That is why Alan said, I have my thinking, judgment, all thoughts, feelings, and records are all there. When you feel that there exists something, it would be impossible for you to blend in Dharma realm. Although he knew there should be fusing into one, he just did not know how to become one. Therefore, he did not know how to fuse with it. So you have to understand what is the emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. It is said that, no ignorance and no ending of ignorance, in Heart Sutra. As there is no ignorance, it is needless to say when it will vanish or end. As there is no ignorance, there will not be a need for the ending of ignorance. That is why it is said, no ending of ignorance, because it never exits. Until coming to know old age and death, you have no aging or death there because self-nature exists eternally. And no ending of old age and death, as it exists forever, there is no death, and also no aging exists. That is, there is no ending of old age and ending of death. Thus, I will usually be reborn here and I don't know when I don't have to. There is no such matter. There is no suffering, accumulating, exterminating, or the way, as I have just mentioned. If there is no suffering, it will not accumulate any pain and there will be no pain. Therefore, you don't need anything to exterminate those pain and you don't need to practice the way to exterminate those pain. No wisdom and no attainment, because your self-nature knows everything. You don't need any special wisdom to help solving your problems, therefore, you don't need wisdom. It is not wise or unwise. Self-nature knows everything. It does not need to attain anything because it owns everything and it knows everything. There is nothing needs to be attained. Therefore, it wants nothing or it does not want to attain anything. It does not require anything at all. Because there is nothing to be attained, so there is nothing you want to attain, that means nothing can draw you out. Or there is no opposite point for you, and hence no pulling force comes out. That is the rule of nothing to be attained in Dharma realm, a characteristics of Dharma realm. A bodhisattva is an awakened sentient being. Having understood the characteristics of Dharma realm, you will be awakened. Following this prajnaparamita, you can follow this wisdom to reach this Dharma realm. If you could understand this truth completely, you will have no worry and obstructions in mind. Having nothing to worry and obstruct in mind means that there is nothing you want to obtain. Example, wisdom. You are completely without any of the attachment. There is no opposite point and there exists no pulling force. Have no worry and obstructions in mind means that you will no longer have any pulling force to trigger an opposite phenomenon, as there are some pulling forces. That is, there is no attainment to appear. If like that, it will be having nothing to worry in mind, you have nothing to worry and you will have no fear. There is no pulling force stopping you, you don't need to be afraid of anything. Leaving distorted dream thinking far behind, your self-nature will then emerge. You will understand everything clearly and you will not be confused. Distorted dream thinking means that you do not know that you are dreaming. You will indulge in flights of fancy and there will be many projected objects. All the mixed fancy and imagination that you consider real will no longer emerge. In such a way, you could attain ultimate nirvana. Even you could fuse in Dharma realm. Ultimate means complete. Nirvana is blending in Dharma realm, you will then become a Buddha. So you will comprehend the Buddhas of the 3 times, all Buddhas of the past, present, and future follow Prajnaparamita, so they also resort to this wisdom to reach the shore on the other side. The shore on the other side is the Dharma realm. Blending into the Dharma realm will have to depend on this wisdom which will guide you to the Dharma realm. While explaining Heart Sutra, many people define the shore on the other side, but what does the shore on the other side refer to? The shore on the other side is the Dharma realm. What is the Dharma realm? After all, once you have recovered your own self-nature or the Buddha nature, then you will be able to blend into the Dharma realm. Why can you fuse into the Dharma realm? Because you have recovered your self-nature completely, you could fuse in with it as one without any difference and you can attain Buddhahood. Then you could attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that is, unsurpassed, well-balanced and equally abiding. Complete and perfect enlightenment. Then you could recover enlightenment completely. Unsurpassed means that there is nothing more superior and more powerful than this enlightenment. Well-balanced and equally abiding means that this enlightenment is absolutely unbiased and without any deviation. Complete and perfect enlightenment means that this enlightenment is absolutely 100% correct and free from error with the highest degree of purity. That enlightenment is the emergence of self-nature or Buddha nature, which is attaining Buddhahood. The attainment of Buddhahood means that the enlightenment can be revealed completely. Buddhahood means enlightenment, that is the emergence of that real awareness and the ability of recovering the self-nature completely to 100%. Therefore, Prajnaparamita is recognized. Therefore, you have to know that if you want to use a wise method to reach and enter the Dharma realm, it is by this great magical mantra. The great mantra of illumination, the most supreme mantra, the incomparable mantra, and the alleviator of all sufferings. It is the truth by reason of its being non-falsehood. That is why the mantra of Prajnaparamita is spoken out. One can recite it like this. Actually, during each of the fish release event, Vajramaster Yashe they would transmit this mantra to you, the mantra of Prajnaparamita in Heart Sutra. It explains that many sentient beings are unable to enter the Dharma realm. What does it tell for you to enter the Dharma realm? I have said that there are 3 conditions to attain Buddhahood. First, you have to enter Dharma realm to recover the power of self-nature in order to experience the existence of Dharma realm. In fact, it exists always but you cannot experience it. You have to recover some of that power. Is there any method? You are to use this great mantra, the mantra of Heart Sutra. While you recite Heart Sutra, a resonance will break your ignorance, many of those points linking up to form a pulling force, and that pulling force will be broken by this mantra, and so they will decrease gradually. While its force is decreasing, your self-nature will emerge. When it reduces to a certain degree, you will start experiencing the existence of Dharma realm. Therefore, the first step to do is how to experience the existence of Dharma realm. The second is to understand and comprehend emptiness. What is emptiness? Neither existence nor voidness. You may notice that I have never mentioned that there is nothing or there is something. When I explained the whole Heart Sutra, emptiness is neither existence nor voidness. It does not have something because there is not any material substance inside. As said, no eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind, even no pulling force either, and there can't be any pulling force. When there is pulling force, there would be 2 points, and it would not be 1 but 2, because you have added 1 more point there. Okay, what is not voidness? because there are the awarenes and self-nature, therefore, it is not void. What does Dharma realm mean? It refers to the realm in which Dharma nature exists. What is inside, Dharma nature exists there. But where is Dharma realm from? There is not any material substance in Dharma nature. It is not increasing and not decreasing, not created and not annihilated, not impure and not pure. That is Dharma nature. That is why it is not void, because Dharma nature exists there. It has not something because there exists no material substance. It is source of all dharmas, and this Dharma realm can derive all substances. Its power is great enough to do that, and it is called Dharma realm, and this situation is emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. When you have the opportunity to enter the first step, then you can experience the existence of Dharma realm by then, and that is the time to enter Dharma realm. For example, when I strive to practice Dharma, reciting the great mantra, its resonance frequency will eventually emerge to break most points of pulling forces. My self-nature can emerge, and its degree of emergence enables one to experience the existence of Dharma realm. Thus, one can enter the Dharma realm eventually. After entering the Dharma realm, you have to start your second step. You are to comprehend and apply the existence of this emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. That is why I never said, no eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind, and no old age and death, in my explanation. I have never said that everything is nothing. I just said, when there exists no ignorance, it will not induce that pulling force, and there is no ending of that. There would be no old age and death. As there is no old age and death, there would be no ending. No wisdom means that you don't have to separately look for this wisdom, because your self-nature is the great wisdom itself. You possess it yourselves, and you need not to specifically look for this wisdom to help you. You may notice that I have never said there is no wisdom in you in my explanation. I have said that there is no wisdom in the Dharma realm. I have never said that. If so saying, that will be a wrong interpretation of Heart Sutra. It does say that there is no wisdom. It says about the existence of self-nature, which is already the greatest wisdom. All wisdom is already within the self-nature. Therefore, you don't need to look for another wisdom to help you solve your problems. You don't need to find it or other things to help you. You have already possessed it, understood. That is the proper way to explain Heart Sutra. If you explain Dharma realm in such a way as there is no wisdom, no eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and no old age or death, everything is nothing, everything is empty, then it will be totally wrong to comprehend the Heart Sutra, and so you have to be very careful indeed. If someone explains to you in such a way, he or she cannot enter the Dharma realm. Even if one has entered the Dharma realm, he or she would fall out quickly, or would even fall into the trap of attachment to emptiness. It is because he or she does not understand what the Dharma realm really is. There will be serious consequences if we comprehend the Heart Sutra wrongly, and there would be no opportunity to enter the Dharma realm. We cannot care less of that. Okay. There are 3 conditions to fuse successfully, as we said. First, you have to recover self-nature and then enter Dharma realm as just been mentioned. Is there any way to enter Dharma realm automatically as Alan did without reciting the great mantra? It is possible, that is when you die or when you practice meditation deeply to a certain extent such that self-nature emerges finally. But I have to tell you that it is useless no matter how many times you die. You could figure out that there is only a bit more than 10% people could have entered that realm in all the near-death experience cases. Some people even entered terrible realms, and I don't know whether you would enter those terrible realms after death. Alan said, I was fortunate, but there is no guarantee that I could make it next time, but I made it this time all in all. His success of that time merely enables you to open your horizon for the situation of seeing self-nature. Once you have seen the emergence of Buddha nature, you have to treasure to learn Buddhist teachings, to foster this capability so that when you can enter the Dharma realm in future, you can have the opportunity to fuse with it successfully. Because Alan still does not know how to learn Buddhist teachings and he reminisced the emergence of that situation, it would be useless even if he could enter Dharma realm again. Why? As Guru Padma Sambhava has mentioned that all sentient beings are to go through indefinite births, deaths, and rebirths, countless lives and deaths. Although they have experienced that indescribable wisdom light, they actually don't know that they have seen wisdom light for many times indeed. What is this wisdom light? How could you feel your self-nature, when you reveal that greatest energy in the form of light that is known as wisdom light? Yet with the hindrance of ignorance, we are unable to recognize it. What is ignorance? It refers to stupidity. What is stupidity? You could imagine that Bodhisattva Maitreya still has a very subtle and minute ignorance of illusion since beginningless time, therefore, he could not become a Buddha in the meantime. Because of that, he has to be reborn in this world one more time in order to cleanse his memory. Thus Bodhisattva Maitreya has to come to this world to cleanse his memory, to erase his deepest and extreme subtle and minute ignorance of illusion, and to start all over again. That is known as to Bodhisattva in taking up a Buddha's place in his next life. With that, he could really become a Buddha. Why? Because when we grasp that most subtle and minute thing, we will always think, what caused me to be so after all, what caused my ignorance, which point prevented me from attaining Buddhahood? It means that there is an opposite spot in you. You are still pursuing Dharma from outside, pursuing something from outside. It is a habitual thinking coexisting with your birth. When we get used to pursuing things from outside, it is called ignorance of illusion since beginningless time. It is a kind of ignorance which is seemingly real and seemingly illusory. It takes a time of death to erase it. That is why Bodhisattva Maitreya has to be reborn one more time, and die one more time to brainwash in rebirth. He can then continue practicing Dharma to erase all the stupidity known as ignorance of illusion since beginningless time. After then, he can finally become a Buddha. By the end, this ignorance or stupidity is the main factor preventing us from attaining Buddhahood. What is the highest level of ignorance? As I said, that is the ignorance and stupidity on not understanding neither existence nor voidness. That is the same as the misunderstanding of Heart Sutra, and that is the ignorance and stupidity preventing you from attaining Buddhahood. Therefore, Guru Padma Sambhava said that having this ignorance, sentient beings keep on wandering around in samsara indefinitely. Therefore, if we have met the first condition, we must meet the second condition. When you have successfully entered Dharma realm when dying or during Dharma practicing, as Alan said, you have to meet the second condition after entering the Dharma realm. The second condition is that you have to understand what is emptiness, the main content of Heart Sutra I have just mentioned. You have to understand what is emptiness and how to apply it. Then how do we apply emptiness and the thing mentioned in Heart Sutra? In other words, you have to learn mind training. The first dimension of mind training is to practice the emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions in our daily lives continuously. The second one is to use the entire emptiness, emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, as I have just explained, as the main frame of our thinking. As I explained, you have to remember that emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions is not idiotic. Thus this emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions is not equal to empty up everything. It is not to take it non-existent when a vehicle is running towards you, or to empty everything in all behavior mechanism. Absolutely not. The first step is to know its procedures. That is to use your wisdom to formulate the foundation of mind training. As to the wisdom of the mundane world, you have to understand how to escape from the vehicles. As for otherworldly wisdom, you have to know how to differentiate right and wrong. I have mentioned that as well. You could find every wisdom in the self-nature of Dharma realm, and you don't have to look for another wisdom from outside. That wisdom could differentiate right and wrong automatically. Therefore, Alan said that in the previous case it was automatic. Since we have not recovered that wisdom, the Dharma nature has not revealed yet. What should we do then? We have to knock that wisdom out. We have to do some training to knock that wisdom out. Those trainings require some wisdom to formulate the foundation of mind training so as to knock it out. In the beginning of teaching mind training episodes, my first step is to establish criteria for judging right and wrong related to mind training. The second step is to teach you how to apply, and now I will teach you how to apply these criteria. When we could master it, we could further trigger our wisdom. When is it considered to be skillful? It means that wisdom will emerge and it will be applied automatically when you have mastered it skillfully. It is the same as you will automatically escape from a running vehicle heading towards you. In this perfect foundation of mind training, you will know how to react to events automatically. What is right or wrong, and they are automatic. They all meet the requirement of precepts and cause and effect. All these reactions are triggered by the wisdom of self-nature. If that is the case, you could start practical training of the emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions. Only until then you could have further opportunity to enter into emptiness or Dharma nature. If you do not have this foundation, it would be idiotic when you enter the so-called the emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions. Why is that? Because that is the consequence, for they have wrongly understood and applied emptiness. That is why many people are very confused with practicing emptiness. Is it possible to empty everything so that practicing would be successful? I will tell you that it is absolutely not possible. Because you just could not apply it in your daily life. You don't want to escape when a vehicle is running towards you. When there is something or events heading towards you, you just take them as illusion, and that would be a wrong thinking of attachment to emptiness. That is a consequence of understanding and applying emptiness wrongly. You just don't know how to deal with these events. Those are not wisdom at all, and they are not the real practicing Dharma. While establishing and apply the foundation of mind training, we need to use emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, as the framework of our thinking. What is the difference between mainframe and non-mainframe? What do the three wheels actions refer to? The three wheels actions refer to three split-up parts: ourselves, the main characters. I try to use a comparatively not too Buddhist way to explain the definition to you. I myself, the main character, and others, the opposite parties, are or supposed to be supporting characters, and an event in progress. Those three things are split up into three wheels as the gears of movements. The main points here are, you don't grasp at any one of them but to take them as empty. The question is how to assume that they are empty and not to grasp them. That is application for us to practice in daily life. We have to split them up into three wheels. If not, we cannot fit them into our daily life to practice emptiness. We do it with purposes, or else we do not know how to apply emptiness. Therefore, emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions is a tool for us to apply while we are practicing. This emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, is the principal body of our thinking for coordination use. That is why we don't tear them apart, and we cannot do so. It is used to coordinate the whole thinking system. We have to combine those two to practice. Therefore, we need to meet the second point. If you wanted to know how to apply this emptiness, you have to understand what we have just mentioned. In fact, I am teaching you by explaining mind training episode series, but the problem is that you don't even understand Heart Sutra or misinterpret it, and so is the meaning of emptiness. Some disciples asked me, why didn't you give me empowerments? Why didn't you teach me this emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions? My answer is that you have not yet attained that level. Why you have not attained that level? You even don't know what is right or wrong. You don't know how to communicate with your gurus. You don't know what are right or wrong, precepts, or the disciples' rules. How could your gurus teach you? You don't know the criteria of right or wrong, and you don't have the foundation of mind training, nor this basic wisdom. That is why we cannot teach you the emptiness on the nature of the three wheels actions. Without knowing and applying the real emptiness, you will find it confusing finally. We will not teach you those temporarily, and it is because you have not yet attained that level. How about the third condition you need to have? If you really want to fuse into Dharma realm to attain Buddhahood, the third condition you need to have is to maintain this self-nature. How to maintain it? In fact, our main theme in mind training is practicing Bodhicitta. What is Bodhicitta? It is mainly about awareness in Bodhicitta. Whoever wants to attain Buddhahood, wants to enter Dharma realm to attain Buddhahood so as to attain Anuttara Samkhya-Sambodhi, one has to remember those three conditions as mentioned before. The first condition is your self-nature has recovered to a certain extent, so that you could experience the existence of Dharma realm. That is the first step to enter into the Dharma realm. After entering into the Dharma realm, the second step is to see Dharma nature. You have to understand and apply emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. You have to understand the situation of Heart Sutra as I have mentioned. When you have understood it and you applied it, the third step would be how you can maintain it, maintain and hold onto it until you have formally fused into one with the Dharma nature of Dharma realm, that is to formally achieve well-balanced and equally abiding, complete and perfect enlightenment. What are the conditions to achieve this thing? The third condition is how to do it. First, you must have received and upheld the Bodhisattva precepts, as these Bodhisattva precepts are very important. Therefore, anyone who comes to learn Dharma practice in our Dudjom Buddhist Association will not only learn the 5 precepts and the 10 virtuous deeds, but they also need to receive and observe the Bodhisattva precepts. You have to do so, or else you can choose to withdraw your membership with association. You cannot stay here without learning the Bodhisattva precepts. In the Posatha ceremony of reciting precepts in our Dudjom Buddhist Association, it is necessary for all to recite the Bodhisattva precepts, and to make public confessions of broken precepts. Long ago, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni taught the 4 noble truths. Example: suffering, accumulation, extinction, and path at the very beginning of his first sermon. When teaching Hinayana disciples, they do not have to arouse their bodhicitta or to receive and observe bodhisattva precepts. After teaching them to a certain extent, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni started to teach them the bodhisattva precepts. He asked his disciples to learn the bodhisattva precepts, explaining to them in details of the contents of the bodhisattva precepts. Some of his disciples were furious, with about 500 disciples leaving and saying that they did not want to receive that kind of precepts. Don't you know how did Lord Buddha Shakyamuni scold them? He used a phrase of rotten germinated seeds, bad seeds, in scolding them. He meant some germinated seeds that get rotten. He meant that they were rotten seeds, scolding them in such a way. Rotten at heart, that is not to arouse bodhicitta to help other people, and so they would never grow in bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, it would be impossible to enter Dharma realm. Even having entered Dharma realm, they cannot fuse in it. Those people could never attain Anuttara Samkhya-Sambodhi. Without attaining Anuttara Samkhya-Sambodhi to 100%, they can only liberate themselves from the pulling force without undergoing samsara at most, and that is the position they can reach. It was impossible for them to attain Buddhahood. Their buds were rotten, and so as their minds. That is why Lord Buddha Shakyamuni scolded them like that then. It is not possible that you learn esoteric Buddhism but you don't accept and uphold the Bodhisattva precepts, for you cannot learn anything. Even though you might be fortunate enough as Alan that you could see Dharma realm and Dharma nature when dying, but you just cannot stay there and you would fall out from it. It would be a waste of opportunity. When you have upheld Bodhisattva precepts, you would have the opportunity to fuse in, and that is only an opportunity. That is the reason why I said that there is no other religions that can make it. They would not accept and uphold Bodhisattva precepts and they could not make it. Why? Because the Bodhisattva precepts is about awareness. Accepting and upholding that precept will bring about an essence of precepts in your mind, which can help to trigger one's awareness easily, that is, it has the function to activate, and the pulling force to activate. Do you know that there is nothing in Dharma realm but only self-nature and a pulling force? You don't think of creating another pulling force. Once you think of something, a new pulling force will arise and emerge. When you combine them into one, it takes your self-nature to trigger that pulling force. What to trigger? To trigger the pulling force of that self-nature, for you are to fuse in it. That self-nature is Bodhicitta. If you have upheld the Bodhisattva precepts, you will have that essence of precepts. With that, a pulling force will be triggered to activate it. That is why Lord Buddha Shakyamuni would like to transmit and confer the Bodhisattva precepts to his disciples by sowing a seed into his disciples. This enables a pulling force to be placed inside their mind nature so that when they enter Dharma realm in future, they would have an opportunity to attain Buddhahood. But it was unexpected that many of them left, saying that they did not want to learn. That is why Lord Buddha Shakyamuni said that they were rotten seeds. It is impossible to put a pulling force into those rotten seeds, scolding them as rotten seeds. Therefore, we need to receive and uphold the Bodhisattva precepts in which its essence of precepts will help arouse your Bodhicitta, that is, to trigger your awareness. On the contrary, if you do not accept Bodhisattva precepts, your Bodhicitta and awareness will not be activated. Just as Alan who fell off from it and could not fuse into one with Dharma nature. Thus he could not attain Buddhahood. Okay. The second is to accept and uphold Samaya's precept. That is not a must but preferable. Why? How could we turn having an opportunity to certainly for sure? You have to get ready those preparatory work and training while alive. If you want to be as lucky as Alan to enter Dharma realm after death, and then luckily fuse in it, I tell you frankly that there is no such lucky thing in the world. In fact, you could not simply fuse in it if you don't have this kind of nature. You could not simply arouse it by luck. However, how much it has to arouse, 1% is 1% and it would not suddenly change to 20% or 50% luckily. Therefore, you must have got this kind of training before you die and got that level, then you could have that percentage when you could really enter Dharma realm. Then you could have that extent to fuse in it. Of course, it would be better to accept and uphold Samaya's precept, which is exclusively in esoteric Buddhism. There are levels in Samaya's precept, example, high and medium. Its essence of precepts is all about the application of self-nature. Its medium and high levels enable you to have opportunities to fuse into self-nature. What is Samaya precept? In issue number 46 of the Lake of Lotus, Samaya precept has been explained thoroughly. In the article of advice on Dharma practice, key points, and deviations in Dharma practice. In fact, Samaya is about one's self-nature. If you say, I only learn exoteric Buddhism but not esoteric Buddhism, then why I need have to uphold such kind of precept? Well, then you will have to accept and uphold the self-natured precept. What is self-natured precept? The characteristics of self-natured precept has been explained in details in our previous lesson, the 6th session of our mind training series. You can watch it on the YouTube, or the DVD of the 6th session of mind training, the 21st series of Essence of Tibetan Buddhism. But as I have mentioned, it is very difficult to uphold and keep one's self-natured precept. You had better hold Bodhisattva precept, after all. It is necessary for you to hold Bodhisattva precept unless you don't want to attain Buddhahood. On the contrary, if you want to attain Buddhahood and you don't want to miss the opportunity to see one's self-nature, you have to uphold Bodhisattva precept, and that is the minimum requirement. If you could hold Samaya's precept before you die, your chance of being successful will be comparatively higher. There are levels of Samaya's precept, and it depends on which level you are on so that you will know that your chance would be 20%, or 30%, 50%, 80%, or 90%. It depends on which level of Samaya's precept you are holding. Okay, exoteric Buddhism mainly focus on theories. It all depends on your comprehension, and it takes 3 asamkhya kalpas. What is self-comprehension? It depends on yourselves to read classics and sutras to comprehend. If you are to listen to someone explaining Heart Sutra, those people have to be of very high levels, and provided that they don't wrongly explain Heart Sutra, and that is still feasible. Esoteric Buddhism mainly attaches to practice with the guidance of gurus. Those gurus have to be able to explain the theories without wrongly explaining Heart Sutra, or else it would not be feasible. In the same sense, they cannot wrongly explain emptiness, and they can teach you how to build up the criteria for mind training. So the criteria for mind training refer to self-nature and the nature of mind. It would be correct if it refers to the levels of the nature of mind. If those gurus cannot explain these theories, they do not really comprehend their essence. They do not even know Dharma realm or Dharma nature. They do not even know how to enter Dharma realm, or what Dharma realm really is. They don't know how to stay there, or they know nothing about it. They would only explain it literally to you after all. It is not the same as knowing how to explain. If they use that wrong theories to guide you to practice, it would all be practicing blindly. For it would be incomprehensible. It would be easy to fall off accidentally. Why, suppose when they explain Heart Sutra, they say that everything is empty and there is nothing in it. That would be a wrong explanation, of course. It is not everything is nothing, nor there is everything. Then, what does it refer to? If they could not explain that, what they have practiced would be all wrong. Thus they would teach you all those. Even though you can enter Dharma realm and see self-nature when you die, you just cannot make it, and you would fall off finally. Do you know where you would fall into after then? That will be explained later. After we die, we would stay in our bodies for about 3.5 days, and then we would leave our bodies unless you would be knocked out in some accidents. You would then cross into another process or reorganization in a very fast speed. You were to stay in a temporary zone, and gradually you were to enter the journey of rebirth. That is the case. The first process is for you to stay in your body for about 3.5 days, and this is called the bardo of dying. The first judgment would be there, and self-nature or Dharma nature would be seen the first time as what Alan saw. In that judgment, there is no third party but you yourselves, and that would be the judgment of self-nature. Okay, the second is the bardo of Dharmata, and this stage would be extremely rapid. It is said that there would be 14 days. Unless you had practiced good enough to stay there 14 days, or you would fly away in less than a second, and that would be really fast. The emergence of the judgment of self-nature in the bardo of dying, as mentioned by Alan, there would be no way to lie and would not be possible to do so. Therefore, why you have to practice self-nature precept, even you don't practice esoteric Buddhism, you have to practice it while you are alive. You will get used to self-nature as a precept while you are alive. It would be feasible only with self-nature as the precept, and there should be no deviation at all. Because you get used to it, you would judge yourself with self-nature when you entered Dharma realm. You would discover that you yourself have nothing wrong and nothing deviated. That is the way for you to fuse as one with the Dharma realm. Why it is said that the fusing percentage of upholding self-natured precept is comparatively higher, it still depends to what extent you can uphold this self-natured precept. If you say, I have a guru guiding me to observe Samaya's precept, that will be more practical because you are led and assisted to do so. But it takes a guru with such authentic practicing level. If you would reach the bardo of Dharmata, and you see the emergence of self-nature or Dharma nature, and Dharma realm, normally is the second or even more emergences, depending on how strong is your meditation power. Some people might see it many times, thus, they can enter Dharma realm many times. Some cannot enter even once. It depends on how strong and how long of your meditation power. Then what is the third stage? Entering the temporary zone, namely the bardo of becoming, which is the third stage. The second stage of judgment will emerge. Until then, you will see Yamaraja or a third party would judge you. You would still have the opportunity to see the emergence of Dharma nature through Dharma practice, still have the opportunity to enter Dharma realm because you have not yet linked with the material body. When you have not yet linked with material body, not yet be reborn, your energy would be much more powerful. Pure spiritual power is easier to enter Dharma realm so long as you compile with the procedures taught by your guru, you will find it easier to make it. Should you wish to have the detailed explanation of these three stages, please refer to the 9th to 11th sessions of the teachings on authentic practices in exoteric and esoteric Buddhism, but not the essence on the practice of Tibetan Buddhism. These 3 sessions have explained those 3 stages in great details. Okay. Let's talk about these 3 stages. In the first stage, it mainly deals with the training of mind training and emptiness. It could help you to catch that moment. That's to say, there is a guru teaching you what is emptiness and how to maintain emptiness. The Bodhisattva precepts are transmitted to you, teaching you the standard of mind training, with the different steps, as well as the emptiness on the nature of the 3 wheels actions. Then you will know how to apply them. For the time being, you just listen to my explanation and you will only know what is neither existence nor voidness, but you still don't know how to practice and apply them. Why is it necessary to do these trainings? It is for you to grasp that opportunity when you enter the first stage of Dharma realm. They are mainly training of mind training and emptiness. In the second stage, what training do you need? The training of light practicing by a guru is needed, for all reorganization processes are in this stage. During the process of reorganization, there would be various energies generated with lights of different colors. You are to practice the training of lights so as to fit into this stage. Then you could catch the good thing in that stage to help yourselves to attain Buddhahood. Without such a guru or no guru teaching you at all, you won't understand that there would be so many lights coming out in this stage of reorganization as the energy changes. After reading the whole book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you would discover that why there would be so many lights. Where do they come from? It looks mystified as it seems that they are from movies of fighting heroes or science fictions. Of course not. It is a process of reorganization, a change of energy. Therefore, there are many different colors of lights appearing. 5 elements as we called them while gathering material substances, different colors of lights would emerge as we possess many elements of these materials. So there will be different lights appear, it is how they come out. The third stage, I believe that most sentient beings would enter this stage. If you have to teach those sentient beings to deal with that situation, you should start with the third stage. Many people are unable to catch the first stage, no matter how smart you are or even you know emptiness. They may not be able to catch that opportunity, because they have to follow slowly the methods that I'm teaching you now to do. If there are still many people who have wrongly explained Heart Sutra, they just cannot catch it. Most sentient beings can enter the third stage. What kind of practicing method is needed there? It mainly adopts some hindrance removal teaching methods to deal with specific situations. It is necessary to deal with the situation of the third stage. That environment has various situations and you have to learn practicing methods to deal with that. It is necessary to practice in line with mind training and emptiness. Therefore, different practicing methods will be taught to deal with different stages. The first stage is mainly about emptiness as I have just mentioned because you are unable to catch it even you may have entered Dharma realm. The second stage is practicing method of lights. The third stage is some practices of dealing with that situation and removal of hindrances, and some teachings to help you for rebirth. If you reach the third stage without any teachings on rebirth, you would not know how to be reborn and what method to get reborn. You just could not deal with that situation and it would be dangerous. Therefore, You have to know that there are 3 different stages after death. It takes a long time for your guru to teach you the methods for those 3 stages. In esoteric Buddhism, gurus have to observe whether their disciples' mind is upright or not. The gurus would teach their disciples only when their minds are correct, or else those gurus would violate precepts. Therefore, our Dudjom Buddhist Association has established the Posatha ceremony, the ceremony of reciting precepts in which our disciples are required to attend. They are to recite some precepts. The details of Bodhisattva precepts will be explained to them so as to correct their nature of the mind. Once your mind has deviated without any corrections, all the teachings will soon become useless. Our teaching on rebirth will be useless to them because the pulling force of that karma is much stronger than what they have practiced. Therefore, we have attached great importance to how to correct the mind nature of our disciples. It is stated in precepts that disciples must not deceive their gurus. Any disciples lying to their gurus will be considered deceiving disciples. According to the precepts of gurus, they are not allowed to accept those disciples. Therefore, do not lie to your gurus, or else your gurus are forced not to accept you, and that is very serious. Therefore, mind training and emptiness occupy a higher percentage. Some people say, we could see self-nature and Dharma realm when dying. Even we don't understand Buddhist teachings, we still have the opportunity to fuse into Dharma realm to attain Buddhahood. Is it right? I tell you now that it is incorrect. They just cannot enter Dharma realm. You don't understand the 3 things I mentioned. Even though you could make it the first step but not the second and the third steps, you just could not attain Buddhahood. The highest level could be reached is heavenly realm or formless realm, staying in the status of attachment to emptiness. That is to say that you have to possess the 3 conditions as we mentioned so that you would have the opportunity to attain Buddhahood. For example, some religions teach others to empty everything, telling them there is nothing. They think that emptying everything would be fine. They don't know that awareness does exit. Thinking that emptying everything would be fine, they think that there is nothing in formless realm. Most people practice in such a way are trapped more seriously because they would be stuck in formless realm. There is really nothing in formless realm, not even awareness. Thus once there is a vehicle running towards you, you just don't know how to avoid it, and it would be idiotic. Because some gurus wrongly teach others and their disciples would be stuck. It is a very wrong view and understanding, and its bad effects are tremendous. Therefore, it would be disastrous if you have wrongly followed those gurus. The better you practice, you will be stuck more seriously in formless realm. Some other religions even wrongly comprehend Heart Sutra and teach others wrongly. All in all, the more they practice, they will be stuck in the situation of attachment to emptiness in formless realm. They misunderstand neither existence nor emptiness, and they would enter formless realm where there is no material substance. Okay. Let's see these 3 stages. In the first stage, if we were forced to subside as Alan did, what would be next? I can tell you that there would be no pulling force in Dharma realm and they would be absolutely safe there. Only your mind nature would work. If your mind nature knows what's emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, you would have a better chance to fuse with it. If you have received and held the Bodhisattva precept, its essence of precepts will help you reveal the self-nature, and you will even have a better chance. If you have upheld Samaya's precept, or upkeeping your self-natured precept, well, you would have a greater opportunity to fuse into one in Dharma realm. Then there would be no force pulling you out, or you would fall out. Guess where you would be when falling out? Once you have fallen out from Dharma realm, you would have no protective power at all, and all karmic forces will appear. When they emerge, and it would be very fast as I mentioned before. If your meditation power is not good enough, you would be dragged away. Where would you be going? To the 3rd stage to be reborn. Once you are dragged to the 3rd stage, you have to learn how to get reborn, or learn not to get reborn but go to the Pure Land. You are to learn these practicing methods. As regards these practicing methods, I will focus on teaching our disciples in training camp, where we will teach our disciples the situations after death. We would teach them how to deal with different environments, and we would start from the latter part. With the third stage first, I would teach more for the third stage, as most of you would fall in that stage. There would be many lights in the second stage. You would not understand what I said because you have never been there before. I have also taught some for the first stage, as I explained earlier. Why do I have to talk about the first situation and break it into details to teach you clearly? And to quote Alan's case this time, it is because there is a cause and condition. In fact, the cause and condition are ripened and matched together. Because someone has requested me for Dharma teaching, and so I explain this, because Buddhist teaching has to be explained only on request. I have a disciple who has been helping our association wholeheartedly for 10 years, and he has been serving Buddhist activities well. He asked me once. He was aware of a case introduced by Dr. Peter Fenwick. Many Dharma practitioners have misunderstood that case as having entered Dharma realm would be attaining Buddhahood. That is the same question as posed by Dr. Peter Fenwick by then. Because that disciple was there also, and he could hear how we answered Dr. Peter Fenwick. That man's experience has a great and far distance from becoming a Buddha, and there are 10 Buddhas in between. In other words, it takes many stages to practice so as to fit in. That disciple then said, some people published books telling that they themselves had entered that realm. We don't have to practice Dharma, and we will naturally enter there without any fear of death. We don't have to practice Dharma either. When we go there in future, death is beautiful, and we will be in that stage after death. In fact, when you go to the first stage, Bardo, of dying, there are more than 10% who could enter Dharma realm, which is very beautiful, and there is no pulling force inside. Of course, it is beautiful, really beautiful. Some fall out and enter the heavenly realm because he has good virtuous rewards, or their bad karma has not emerged yet. He has the opportunity to enter the heavenly realm, and it is beautiful there. Therefore, they think that there is no need to be afraid of death, and death is very beautiful. It is not necessary to practice Dharma because there is no need to be afraid of death. That is not feasible, and there are many problems. They would easily fall out, and Alan is one of the vivid examples. Even I tell you so, most people are to fall out. Their return to be alive after death is actually a fallout. If he had fused in it successfully and attained Buddhahood, he would have something different to tell you and would not teach you wrongly or teach you not to practice Dharma. This message is extremely dangerous. After having attained Buddhahood, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni was thinking how to teach others to practice Dharma right away, telling them that they must practice Dharma or something serious would happen and he must teach them. That is why after attaining Buddhahood, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni had been pondering for a long time and figured out many methods to teach his disciples. He went to Saranath to do the first sermon of turning of the Dharma wheel, trying his best to teach his disciples. This is what one should do after attaining Buddhahood. Some people who fell off and could not attain Buddhahood, claim that they have entered Dharma realm, or those with near-death experiences who had entered Dharma realm telling others not to practice Dharma nor afraid of death and pain, saying that there was no need to practice. But Lord Buddha Shakyamuni did not say that. He put forward 4 noble truths: sufferings, accumulations, extinction, and path, telling that life is very miserable. This mundane world is a sea of fire. It would be better to quit quickly. If you don't practice Dharma, then you would be in trouble. His sayings are meaningful and useful indeed. Then who is correct, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni or those people with near-death experience? The answer is there that those people are wrong, so you don't listen to them. This disciple asked me, could I bring this video clipping for you to watch so that you could explain it once more? There is something I don't know how to explain and understand. I am worried that someone will be misled after listening to those with near-death experience and they would be miserable. Could Guru please explain that video clipping for us? I promised right away that I will explain to you. Because Dharma is not to be taught unless requested, and the Dharma preachers have to follow the rules. Now that you have asked for teaching, and I am willing to explain to you for sure. But there is one condition, that is, he is required to translate the whole English video clipping into Chinese for me to explain. Because of that, I am here to explain this case in my talk of the Mind Training series. In fact, while I was watching this video clipping, I felt that it should be illustrated by Heart Sutra, because the Heart Sutra explains the special features of Dharma realm and self-nature. When you understand Heart Sutra and its special characteristics, you would have the opportunity to enter Dharma realm in future and further have a better chance to fuse into Dharma realm. I have heard many people explaining Heart Sutra. Some of them wrongly explained it and some did explain a bit but not up to the point. I have been thinking of explaining Heart Sutra again for a long time, but the causal conditions have not been there. I do think I would explain it in Mind Training series one day. Therefore, I talk about it gradually and I started it with some fundamental knowledge and direction. Until now, as a disciple asked for that, I have to explain Heart Sutra as I promised to explain that video clipping. If I don't explain Heart Sutra, you will not know how important Heart Sutra is. We are grateful for Master Hsuan Tsung. Without him, we could not have the blessing to read Heart Sutra today. Therefore, the merit of Master Hsuan Tsung has been very great indeed, and he is truly respectful. I could tell you that Heart Sutra is extremely important. I will repeat what Alan said, there is no you or me, no God. What does it mean? It represents emptiness on no self. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni taught his disciples of Hinayana not to hold on to themselves as real. There is no self, no anybody, you have to empty these first. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni asked them for emptiness on no self, but he didn't tell them that actually their self-nature did exist. There is nothing after emptiness on no self. But these people did not further practice Dharma to a deeper level. They only knew emptiness on no self but didn't understand what the emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma is. That is, we grasp at the Dharma methods after learning them. This kind of grasping is the same as many esoteric Buddhist practitioners today who are often obsessed with the rituals of practice. They want to know what could be achieved with those practicing methods. They do not know that they should practice them with emptiness. The practicing method itself is a kind of attachment. They don't have the bodhicitta as they have not upheld the bodhisattva precepts, therefore, their minds are all deviated. Because of that, they do not possess the awareness of emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Without that, they just cannot induce that awareness. They cannot induce that awareness because they do not have that pulling force and they have no way to fuse into one with Dharma realm. Therefore, we have to remember to uphold this bodhisattva precepts. If you have upheld the bodhisattva precepts, the essence of precepts has been inside you. This essence of precepts can enable you to have the opportunities to arouse the awareness of neither existence nor voidness. Thus you would have the opportunity to fuse into Dharma realm. It also tells you that you need to practice Dharma and to receive some correct training on Dharma practice. Deviated training will stick you in the formless realm, as you emptied everything, which is a kind of attachment to emptiness. In Buddhism, what would we have for practicing Dharma? If you are not wrong, what results would you have according to the practicing way of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni? Some disciples asked me, what results will that be if we follow you to practice Dharma? Now I tell you the result. If we had the Lord Buddha here to teach you the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Paths, or you could read Buddhist sutras and scriptures after Lord Buddha had passed away, you could follow that for Buddhist teachings. If you can understand emptiness on no self, then you are on the pathway to practice Hinayana and you can liberate from samsara. But because you are lacking the emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma and Bodhicitta, you are unable to arouse Samyak Sambodhi. So you cannot enter and fuse into Dharma realm. At most you could only become an Arhat. If there were a Buddha coming to this world, and you could hear the Buddha's explanation of the 12 links of interdependent origination, 12 nidanas to comprehend, Emptiness on no self and part of the emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma without any attachment. Then what you are practicing is called pratyekabuddhayana. It is because you have realized and understood the worldly 12 links of interdependent originations that makes your awareness arising. Or when there were no Buddha in the world, and neither Lord Buddha Shakyamuni nor Buddhist sutras and scriptures were there, yet you alone can comprehend the truth yourself by seeing water running and flowers growing and withering. You have, therefore, comprehended the worldly truth of impermanence yourself. It is really impermanent, so there is nothing eternal. When you comprehend emptiness on no self and partial emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma, then it is called pratyekabuddhayana. Because you don't comprehend the emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma comprehensively, we call it the pathway to middle vehicle. You can only help yourself, but you just cannot help others. Since you don't comprehend or realize the emptiness on the attachment to the Dharma completely, and you are lacking the arousal of bodhicitta, you cannot activate your own awareness for an opportunity to induce samyak sambodhi. You cannot enter Dharma realm. You can liberate yourself from samsara to be a pratyekabuddha at most. If someone can teach you Buddhist teachings, of course the teachings of correct Buddhist Dharma, not the wrong one, you could then gradually comprehend emptiness on no self and emptiness on Dharma self. If you could receive and uphold onto the Bodhisattva precepts, you can further arouse bodhicitta, and this pathway is called Bodhisattvayana or Mahayana. You can have the opportunity to recover self-nature, or awareness, and enter into the Dharma realm, and be fused with it as one. It is necessary to practice Bodhisattvayana for that. That is why Lord Buddha Shakyamuni had scolded some of his disciples when they were not willing to accept the Bodhisattva precepts. If you pursue Bodhisattvayana, you will then have the opportunity to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, to attain Buddhahood. And you have to remember one thing: these 3 pathways can help you get liberated from samsara. Only by this pathway of Bodhisattvayana, you can anytime enter Dharma realm to formally attain Buddhahood, to possess this great power forever without any problem. During the process of your Dharma practice, many people told me that they didn't want to learn so many things so long as reciting Namo Amitabha is enough. Even someone has told me that by reciting 3 times of Namo Amitabha, he could reach to Sita heaven. He said he would be content if he could go to the heavenly realm, and he didn't want to learn so many things. Now, I have to tell you that everything and teachings that Lord Buddha Shakyamuni had taught matches the 3 Dharma seals. Therefore, we don't and could not turn things upside down. What are the 3 Dharma seals? The first Dharma seal is all actions are impermanent. Everything is impermanent, and there is nothing eternal without subject to change. Nobody has said that you can certainly reach the heavenly realm by reciting 3 times. It would be constant without subject to change, and it would become a rule. If that is the case, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni didn't need to teach people in such a difficult way, and also scolded his disciples that, if you don't receive and uphold the Bodhisattva precepts, you don't pursue Bodhisattvayana, you are rotten seeds. Did he have to scold them? Since it is not feasible, he then earnestly advised us to practice Dharma hardly, such that there would be an opportunity for us to get liberated from the suffering sea of samsara. Thus, this so-called constant truth is wrong, and it is not a true situation at all. It is impossible just to recite 3 sentences to enable you to enter the heavenly realm. It is not possible, and it causes many people to give up the opportunity and determination to practice Dharma with efforts. Those people misleading sentient beings are harming themselves and others, and they would suffer various retributions severely for misleading others. I really appreciate the Sutra on the Buddha Amitabha very much. It is said, in 1 day, 2 days, 7 days, you have to keep your mind with undisturbed thoughts and without inversion in 1 to 7 days with strong concentration. While reciting Namo Amitabha, your meditation power has to be very strong so that you could perceive 3 saints in the West approaching to receive you. They may be there to receive you, but whether you can really reach these Pure Land or Buddha Land is another matter. It all depends on your nature of the mind by then. It would also depend on other factors such as whether you have violated any significant precepts or not. All these are important and correct. To fit this logic of mind with undisturbed thoughts, you need to have this meditation power. As for the mind without inversion, you have to maintain such condition for a long time in order to be successful. Where could we go then? We could reach the pure land of ultimate bliss in the West, or other places in heavenly realm, but that is not the situation of attaining Buddhahood. Please don't misunderstand it. Why can they get liberated from samsara? In fact, they do not get liberated from samsara. It is only that Buddha Amitabha has agglomerated an environment that can cut off this karmic pulling force to protect you. This is called taking rebirths with karmas. You can continue practicing Dharma in this special environment until you can formally get liberated from samsara yourself. In fact, if Buddha Amitabha cut away this kind of protective power not to separate you from the karmic pulling force, you would fall out right away. Don't think that once you have reached Buddha Amitabha's pure land, then you can certainly get liberated from samsara. It is because you yourselves cannot have that ability. It is the power of Buddha Amitabha. There is one more condition, which is not due to the lacking of compassion of Buddha Amitabha but under the law of nature. You have to do it this way to make it. That is, you must keep your mind with undisturbed thoughts. That is why some people asked which sutras had mentioned about this. I don't know what sutra it is, and that sutra might not be true. Any sutras violating the 3 Dharma seals of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni are faked ones. Some people said that one can go to the heavenly realm only by reciting Namo Bodhisattva Maitreya 3 times and there is no need to practice Dharma. They said, I don't want to practice Dharma, for it is too hard. That's right, Dharma practice is hard. It will be even harder if you don't practice Dharma, and you will have a longer period to suffer. Therefore, Dharma practicing is necessary. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni had been explaining sutras with great hardship for 49 years so as to teach people to practice Dharma. Why he had to teach people to practice Dharma in such a difficult way? If liberation methods are that easy, there is no need for him to teach you so many things. Many people who are teaching Buddhist Dharma are unable to speak out the real situation of what the Lord Buddha had taught us in both the sutras and tantras. They avoid talking about the real situation on the sea of sufferings, and do not pay attention to precepts, which means that they violate the teachings of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni never cheated you from the very beginning to the end. This mundane world is a sea of sufferings. He never told you that Dharma practice is a very simple and happy matter. He never said that we can practice Dharma happily, it is okay and there is no fear for death. Real Dharma practitioners would not say anything of ambiguity. They have high regard for precepts. But some gurus would only tell the happy illusion to anesthetize themselves. They also ask you to anesthetize yourselves, and that is the problem. By dint of some phenomena or false words, they persuade others that there is no need to make efforts to practice Dharma fully and pragmatically. All these are wrong. We need to make efforts to practice Dharma fully and pragmatically, but not with one single Dharma practicing method. It is not feasible just to recite Namo Amitabha a few times. It is necessary to make efforts to practice Dharma fully and pragmatically. There are some people who teach some teaching methods in order to make sentient beings confused and lacking the intention and need for holistic Dharma practice, making them short of any protective power. This would affect their rebirths in future. These teachings are the malicious karma hurting others and themselves as well. Very bad cause is thus sown and they have to bear all the consequences. Don't think that explaining Buddhist teachings would not plant bad karma. Wrong explanation of Buddhist teachings to mislead others would plant evil causes. Therefore, no matter exoteric or esoteric Buddhism we practice, it would be practicing blindly if we don't have the foundation of exoteric Buddhism. Buddhist Dharma practices require mind training, and mind training focuses on one's mind. It is necessary to train one's mind correctly. Therefore, when a guru has to train a disciple, he must focus on the mind of his disciples, helping and guiding him to elevate. That is the right way. If he let the disciple's mind descend, that would be wrong. He should do anything that could balance the mind nature of his disciple. They are then deemed to be someone really teaching and helping others practicing Dharma. Dharma practice is the training of one's mind so as to reflect and illuminate all one's behavioral actions. This reflection and illumination is a kind of awareness. Like Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, we are to help ourselves by reflecting and illuminating our deep inside and to elevate ourselves to obtain the wisdom to enter Dharma realm of the other shore. In fact, Dharma practice is to practice these inner components. In this secular world, we often see people without moral standards. The lacking of moral standards will constitute a main cause for these people's downfall for rebirths in the future. Shameless, having no sense of remorse, and don't want to think. In fact, I have given refuge to such kind of disciples. They are shameless, having no sense of remorse, and they almost thought that they were smarter than their gurus. Without any reasoning power, they thought that they were correct in everything they did. They would usually enter the animal's path. Dharma practitioners who have violated heavy precepts would not only enter the animal realm, they would normally enter the hell realm as well. If they are shameless with no sense of remorse, like to reason but to think of how to make plots, they would enter the hungry ghost's realm if their greed is heavy. If their anger is great, they would go to the hell realm. For those who have moral standards, are fond of thinking with great virtuous mind, they would enter the heavenly realm while those with bad temper would go to Asura realm. Anyone with good intention and bad temper in between would go to human realm. Lord Buddha Shakyamuni had preached the Buddhist Dharma for 49 years, teaching us to understand the law of causes and effects. Alan's case has confirmed this fact. We must establish a set of correct behavior criteria. We have to know what is right and wrong. Therefore, we need to understand precepts and hold on to them. We have to receive trainings and we have to know how to practice mind training and the skills of practicing Dharma. I now teach you how to practice mind training and teach our disciples the skills of practicing Dharma. I will teach you step by step but not the way as you have thought to reach the top in one single step. I also hope you could, but it doesn't work that way. It would only do you harm. The skill of mind training is based on the degree of correctness of mind. In other words, mind is the main character. The role of the guru is to adjust the mind of his disciples. The skills of Dharma practice is taught in accordance with the level of mind training. Otherwise, any casual teaching would only make them enter into other terrible paths. You may be stuck in the formless realm, or trapped in the hell realm. You will then suffer a lot and for a very long time. Remember, the focus of the entire Buddhist teaching is about causes and effects determined by the mind nature, as mentioned in our first lesson of the mind training series. To use the elevation or descent of one's mind nature to judge right and wrong was explained in the second lesson. This rule prevails all rules in the world and it was explained in the third lesson. What are the criteria of the Buddhist Dharma? As mentioned in the fourth lesson, whatever makes one's mind elevated is right, makes one's mind descend is wrong. Anything that can help balancing one's mind must be done. How to use the balance of mind was explained in the fifth lesson. Is a lie with good intention right or wrong? Was explained in the sixth lesson. How to meet the standard of mind training was explained a bit in the sixth lesson and we talk more in this lesson. So this is the seventh lesson in which we have explained the essence of Heart Sutra and the corresponding relationship between fusing into one and mind training and emptiness. We now stop here.